Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Welcome one, welcome all. The Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. What's up, everybody? A Thursday edition of the show. The Eagles have their open practice tonight, 1 week away from their opener against the Ravens, their preseason opener, of course. Preseason football is back tonight, the Hall of Fame game. You can listen to it on 97.3 ESPN. Phils have the day off. Going to talk a little Phils at the bottom of the hour with Scott Lauber. Get his thoughts on what this team's problems are right now. You know, I do want to kind of take a look at some of the issues this team has and widen the lens a bit and see if you guys are in or out on some of the things that I'm bringing to the table today. If you're picking up what I'm putting down on a Thursday edition is, number one, this Phillies team obviously is in a slump. Are they in a slump because they're playing better baseball teams? Are they in a slump because it's the long 162? Are they in a slump because people are figuring them out? There's a couple of things that happen here, right? You get young players sometimes, and they get off to a good start, and then the league starts to adjust to them, and they don't make the adjustment back. Is that what's happening here? I don't think so. What the Phillies have going on right now is perennial all-star players are hitting the skids a little bit. So I don't put a lot of stock in what's going on with the Phillies right now because of who it is. You know, if they're losing games and Bryce Harper's hitting 350 through this streak of losses, then I'm a little bit different. If they're losing games and Trey Turner is hitting 407 and just ripping the cover off the ball, and the Phillies are still unable to overcome and get wins with Harper and Turner and Schwarber just carrying them on nights, and they're just not able to find ways to win, now I'm a little bit more concerned about the peripheral guys around them not doing their job the way they did in the first half of the season. Like, for instance, I think this can be questioned. I want you to keep this into perspective, okay? The Phillies were on, at their height, a 114-win pace. I got news for you. This roster is not a 114-win roster. So when you get out to a 114-win pace, expectations kind of get discombobulated a little bit. They're on about a 95-win pace right now. That's a really good team, but it has flaws. That's where this Phillies team is. What are their flaws, and are those flaws insurmountable? Look at the teams around you. You know, you have to match up against your contemporaries. You know, you're not playing the 28 Yankees here. You're playing the Braves and the Dodgers and the Brewers and the Padres and the Diamondbacks. What do they have? What did they do? Well, they're all flawed. A lot of them. A lot of teams have flaws. The Phillies have flaws. Now, the Phillies' flaws showed less in the first couple months of the season, and it allowed them to get out to a big lead in the division. But were they really 10 games better than the Atlanta Braves? I don't think anybody thought that that was the case. Now, you might say, well, the Braves are a depleted team. They've got a lot of injuries, which is true. But keep in mind, the Phillies built their lead by overcoming a lot of injuries. It's not like the Phillies team has been fully intact all season long with Trey Turner. You know, he missed 6 weeks of the season. Bryce Harper missed a couple of weeks. Schwarber missed a couple of weeks. So, yeah, the Phillies persevered through their injuries. We can't make excuse for the Braves saying, well, they've had injuries. The Phillies had injuries too, and they widened the gap on Atlanta. The interesting part is it's now that the Phillies have gotten healthier in the lineup their pitching rotation has started to falter a little bit. And that pitching rotation, you are now on, how many people had Kobe Allard making a start this year? How many people had Tyler Phillips making multiple starts this year? How many people thought Michael Mercado was going to make a start or two this year for the Phillies? Heck, I went to a game on a Sunday afternoon, and my God, I know it was hot out, and maybe it was a mirage, but I saw Orion Kerkering start a game for the Phillies this year. So the Phillies have had their own injury issues. Now, they're not season-long injuries like the Braves, who lost Spencer Strider, who lost Ronald Acuna, and those guys are big. But the Phillies have had their fair share of injuries and have pulled away from the Braves. What's happening now is kind of a market recorrection. The Phillies broke out to a lead in large part because Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez were all-stars. And they weren't just all-stars. If you were to open up your friendly phone app and go to your betting app of choice, those guys were routinely in the top 10 for the Cy Young Award. Ranger Suarez at one point was one of the top 5 favorites for that award. So the Phillies had an abnormal start to the season. And again, you had an abnormal start to the season. You persevered through injuries, and I think what we're starting to see is the market correction of, hey, things are starting to go back. Right now, the National League Cy Young Award, by the way, Chris Sale's the favorite. Paul Skeens is plus 150, by the way. He was plus 480 like a week ago. He's 150 now. He has passed Zach Wheeler, who's plus 280. Dylan Cease, who threw that no-hitter the other day, he's plus 2,000. Glass now plus 2,800. Green plus 3,000. Aaron Nola is actually higher or has shorter odds to win the Cy Young than Ranger Suarez. You know, the Phillies have 4 guys in the top 10 in the Cy Young. Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, and Christopher Sanchez is now at plus 8,000. Christopher Sanchez is in the top 10 in Cy Young Award odds right now. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. So all those things happened in the first half of the year that put you way out in front of the Braves. And now the market correction is starting to take place. Christopher Sanchez is not a Cy Young candidate. Ranger Suarez is not a Cy Young candidate. He shouldn't be in that conversation. He's a really good pitcher. But come on, did you really think you had 4 Cy Young candidates on this team? Of course not. Now, they pitched like Cy Young candidates in the first half. That's why you had a 10-game lead. But I think we all understand the Phillies' rotation is not filled with 4 Cy Young. This isn't this isn't Lee, Halladay, Hamels, and Oswalt. I mean, come on. So I think from that perspective, this was to be expected. Now, being expected and accepting are different. You don't have to accept it. You could be wondering, well, is this team going to turn it around? Are they able to beat the good teams? I think we're about to find out. You got a stretch of games here that, quite frankly, are the key to this season in terms of how important is being the number 1 seed for the Phillies. How many people out there think that it is optimal importance that the Phillies end up as the number 1 seed because of the home field? Is that something that they have to get? You know, they lost 2 games at home last year in Game 6 and Game 7. So if you're that guy, you would say, who the hell cares? You lost 2 of the most important games of the season on home field. And that's fine to say. You know, baseball is a game in that you're as good as the hot streak that comes behind you. And if your hot streak doesn't line up with your record, then guess what? Your record does you no good, whether you're hitting here, there, or anywhere. Baseball, the 162, has been so diminished by letting 6 teams get into the playoffs. You put 6 teams in the playoffs, you've now widened the field, and you've allowed 3 extra teams, essentially, to get hot. And those three extra teams all did stuff. That's what's interesting about it. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. I think the Phillies legitimately should be worried about a couple things. One, you don't exist in a vacuum. You made improvements. I think teams improved more than you did. One of those teams is San Diego. San Diego improved to the point that you should be concerned. San Diego's bullpen now is a problem. San Diego for years had this offense with all the boppers, with Soto. I say for years. For the series you played against them, they tried it for like 2 years, and then it didn't work. So they got Soto gone, and they decided to kind of change it up a little bit. They got rid of Snell. They tried to change. Their bullpen is really, really good. I think if you're looking at a team and you're saying, well, the Phillies are here, they might be the number one seed, you do not want to get matched up with San Diego in a playoff matchup. They just went out and got a left-handed closer that is going to be a problem. That's a problem. And any team, like I said last week, if I am a National League general manager, I am bulking up on left-handed pitching. I am making sure that I go out there and I get as many left-handed arms that I can find that I can throw at you, Philadelphia. And what did the Padres do? They did that. They went out and they got left-handed pitcher Tanner Scott, who might be the best left-handed pitcher in the majors, in the bullpen. And that, to me, was a huge, huge addition for the Padres. Their bullpen's already good. The Estrada kid is lights out. Suarez has been awesome for them this year. The other guy's name is escaping me. Yuki Matsui has been really good for them. They've got a bunch of arms in that bullpen that are pretty darn good. And getting the left-hander in Tanner Scott, I think, really adds to, if you matched up with them, and more importantly, if you match up with them in the short series, like the Phillies with the Braves. Now, the Phillies have top-end starting pitching that can kind of, obviously, you feel good about Wheeler, Nola, and Suarez pitching in a playoff series, in a 5-game series, but their starting pitching has been solid. Dylan Cease is a Cy Young candidate. Michael King's a Cy Young candidate. He's kind of lower down the list. He's in the Nola, Suarez, and Sanchez. Matt Waldron has been very good this year for them. Those three guys have whips under 1.2. They don't put a lot of guys on base. Dylan Cease, big strikeout guy, bad for the Phillies, who strike out a ton, and he strikes out almost 12 per 9. His whip is under 1, so he doesn't put a lot of guys on base. Michael King, he's another guy, a lot of strikeouts, big strikeout pitcher. ERA and whip low. So they have 3 very good starting pitching, and that's not counting Darvish and Musgrove, who have been hurt all season long. So San Diego would worry me. In the 5-game series, you got to think about it from the notion of what the Phillies have done to the Braves the last couple of years. And what they've done to the Braves is they got into the playoffs, won 2 games in a row. They didn't have to play 3. They won their 2, got their pitching kind of restarted, and then beat the Braves in that first game and set the tone for the series. That's one. So I think San Diego, right now, that team has made kind of some necessary changes to their bullpen that I would say make them a legitimate concern if you got matched up with them in the division series. Remember, those are 5-game series, right? Those are 5-game series. And in a 5-game series, when you have the pitching, I think that makes you feel like, that might be something that can clip us. That might be something that can cost us. The other team would be Arizona. You know, Phillies fans already know what Arizona did to them last year. You look at them now, this Arizona team's better than last year's Arizona team, and I don't think it's particularly all that close. Now, what happens with Christian Walker, we'll see. They added Josh Bell. They have Jock Peterson. He was not there last year. The rest of their lineup is, I think, exactly the same. Moreno's the catcher. Marte's the second baseman. They've got the only guy who's not there is Pham, and they ended up kind of benching him towards the end. They got Gurriel, they got Perdomo, they got Alek Thomas, who crushed you in that game last year. They got Corbin Carroll. But what's better about the Diamondbacks this time around, Zach Allen, Merrill Kelly, they went out and got Eduardo Rodriguez from Detroit last year. They brought in Jordan Montgomery. They have Brandon Pfaadt, who shut you down not once but twice last year. You guys probably all remember the stupid guys, Ginkel and Sewald, those guys who gave you problems. And then they went out and got A.J. Puck. So they've added to a team that already beat you last year. So Arizona isn't a team that's all that worried about playing in Philadelphia or against Philadelphia.
Right.
So right now, you want to break it down and see what the pop is. I think those two teams at the deadline did exactly what they needed to do. Those two teams at the deadline did exactly what they needed to do to go toe-to-toe with you. Now, I can see us playing in October, and if the Phillies sweep those two teams, you guys texting in saying, you remember back in August 1st when you said those teams were a problem? Hey, I'm telling you now, Atlanta, the Brewers, and the Dodgers, those three teams are getting in to the playoffs. It's the ancillary teams I think you need to be a little bit worried about. The ones that aren't definitively, like right now, for instance, wild card National League. Let's take a look. Braves are one game up. San Diego is a half game behind the Braves and Arizona. So I bring this conversation up today because right now, the way it would map out is, now correct me if I'm wrong on this, Josh, right? The Phillies would have the bye as the 1 seed. The Dodgers would have the 2 seed.
Right.
The Padres would play the Braves.
They would play,
and the Diamondbacks would be playing the Brewers.
Yeah, so if those don't know, the way it works is the number 3 division winner of the final standings, they will play the number 3 wild card team. And it basically is like a top and bottom, like the college football playoff used to be. So it's like that, the number 1 seed, quote unquote, in the wild card playoff is actually the 3rd best record division winner. They play the number 3 wild card team, and then the 2 and the 3 wild card teams play each other in the middle.
Right. So the Phillies right now could be matched up with Arizona in that 5-game series because Arizona would play Milwaukee. And if if Arizona beat Milwaukee in that little 3-game series,
correct,
Arizona would play Philadelphia because Arizona right now is the 6th seed.
Right, they are the lowest standing.
And it would almost feel again like Phillies Braves, where you beat them the 1 year, then you play them again the next year, except for this time around, you're the number 1 seed, they're the 6th seed. It kind of flipped a little bit, but Arizona, they're the 6th seed right now again. Now, they're only a half game behind the Padres. They're only a half game up on the Mets. This is all fluid, but my point is this. San Diego, Arizona, I think those two teams are going to be jockeying for 1, 2, or 3, and you're going to have a pretty solid chance of playing one of those two teams in a 5-game series. And the move they made 2 days ago, I think makes them a little bit more apt now to come after you in the playoffs because they both added very strong left-handers.
They added players that are distinctly here to deal with your team. That's
definitely
that's the clear delineator. They didn't just acquire A.J. Puck and Tanner Scott. They didn't just acquire Josh Bell. These are people who are distinctly, historically guys who have created matchup problems for your Philadelphia Phillies?
Phillies off tonight, so no lineup today, no craziness. They need the day off. They're traveling out west to Seattle. They're traveling to play the Mariners, the Dodgers, and Arizona. It's a long road trip. They're going to be gone for the first couple of weeks of August here, ending in Arizona against the Diamondbacks. This is the Sports Bash. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is the opener of the NFL season. Tonight, the Hall of Fame game is on 97.3 ESPN. Catch it live right here. Coverage starts at 7:30. It's the Texans and the Bears. I doubt we'll see Caleb Williams tonight or C.J. Stroud for that matter.
No.
But the Hall of Fame game is back. Making that drive to Wawa or wherever you're going tonight. Pop us on. Hear the cracking of the pads. The Hall of Fame game, an annual tradition. And it's only on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, Scott Lauber of the Philadelphia Inquirer talks a little Phils. Does he think they did enough? And is there some teams he's worried about now that the matchups are all different than they were 3 days ago? He's coming up next on the Sports Bash to discuss.
It's with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:27 Sports Bash. Phil's off tonight. They need it. It's been a struggle. But big picture, the things that they are struggling, should you be concerned about that? Or is it more, hey, it's a 162, it's a long season. You know, you look at Bryce Harper. He's really struggling. He's worried about Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Schwarber. I will say this. There's one thing I think you're allowed to be concerned about. Those guys that, when they're on, they carry you there. They're also the same guys that go ice cold and that have resulted in two, World Series loss. You got no hit in one of them against the Astros. And then the series last year where you just couldn't muster up anything against guys like Brandon Pfaadt, for God's sakes. So that is a little bit concerning. Let's bring in Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer. The Phillies went out. They made a couple of moves. Austin Hayes. I want to start, Scott, with the offensive side of things. You take a look at what has ailed this team in playoff series loss the last 2 years. Did the Phillies address that issue this season? They're going to go back into the playoffs essentially with the same group of guys and had the same issues that's starting to fail them right now in October.
Yeah, so if you're asking about the offense, look, I think that it was a marginal upgrade, which is sort of what we thought it would be. We thought they'd go and get a right-handed hitting outfielder to play either part of the time in left field, or Austin Hayes is getting a chance right now to play most of the time to see if he can be the everyday guy in left, in which case Brandon Marsh moves to center and plays at least against righties. He got a start against a lefty the other night, which surprised me. But I think that was the kind of move that we thought they were going to make, whether it was, Austin Hayes was not somebody who was, I'll be honest with you, on my radar, because at the trade deadline, you tend to look at sellers. You don't tend to think of two contenders making a trade like that. And it's unusual. It's creative on both sides. But you don't really think of those guys. You think of the guys who are on bad teams who are going to move. And, we thought about Lane Thomas. We thought about, Mark Canha, guys like that, who both of them ended up going to other teams. But that was sort of the move. And that's the move they made. So they get Hayes and they'll roll with what they have. And like you said, look, I think the combination of the fact that this high-powered offense went cold simultaneously last year after Game 2 of the NLCS, along with the fact that we just saw the Eagles, right, go from 10-1 to barely making the playoffs and getting bounced right away. I think it's probably natural to kind of look at the Phillies and say, what's going on here? How does this team that was a world beater for 2.5 months have a second half of July like they had, where they lose 11 out of 15 or whatever it's been? I would tell you to look at the Yankees, who we just saw here. The Yankees were, I believe, 50-22 at their high water mark, and had a really bad stretch the last half of June and early July, fell out of first place, seemed to have found their stride again. But, the the point I'm trying to make is really good teams go through tough times, and I think that's what they're going through right now. I'm not saying just hand wave it away and say, like, it'll be fine. There are obviously issues they have to work through, but the reason why most teams don't wind up winning 113 games or whatever the pace the Phillies were on there for a while is because most good teams go through it at some point during the year. And so you end up in the 90s or you end up even in the low hundreds. It's rare to see the team that goes, 113 wins, 115 wins. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing right now is a little bit of a regression. But they believe they're good enough to pull out of it. And their track record in the last calendar year is that they're a really good team. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, obviously, Scott, they bring in Hayes. They're playing him every day, but they added him. He's basically hitting in the 9 hole, which is an upgrade over, I guess, hitting Pache or Rojas in the 9 hole. My question for you, though, is what do you think about what they're doing with the rest of the lineup? I mean, is Marsh a guy that is dependable enough that can hit in the 5 hole? Does he offer enough, that 3, 4, 5? Last year was Stott. He's really struggled, although he's come around lately. Castellanos, we know he's so streaky. What do you think about, is that fluid, that 5, 6, 7, I mean, that part of the order? Do you see that being fluid, or do they like Marsh this year? I mean, you remember, this is a guy that's been hitting in the 8 and 9 hole for you for the most part the last couple runs.
Yeah, so I think, and the numbers bear this out, I think they think Marsh is a different hitter against righties than he is against lefties, for sure. So against righties, I don't think they mind having him in the 5 hole or the 6 hole. Against lefties, either he's not in the lineup or he's going to be much further down. I think, look, Nick Castellanos looks pretty good in the 7 hole, better than he does a lot of the time in the 5 hole. So, if there's a way to kind of push him down in the order, I think they'll look to do it. JT Realmuto is still kind of getting his timing back after missing 5 weeks. He had a better weekend, or a better series, I should say, against the Yankees than he did the previous series against Minnesota and against Cleveland. So maybe he's coming around a little bit. But, I think while he struggles, and to kind of get, to kind of mitigate some of that, I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen Marsh against righties hit a little higher in the lineup than he has in the past.
Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer talk a little Phils as they're kind of struggling along, heading out west. Really tough series now coming up with Seattle and the Dodgers and Arizona. I want to ask you a little bit about what the West has done. San Diego went out and got Scott, a lefty. A.J. Puck is now in Arizona, a lefty. They also got Josh Bell, who seemingly hits a home run every time he's up the bat against you. Those teams, did they make the necessary moves to close the gap and say, hey, Philly, we're coming for you?
I thought so. The way I looked at the deadline heading into it was a little bit like what you just said, like less about the Phillies per se than about some of these other National League contenders closing the gap with the Phillies. I don't think that the Padres went out and got a couple of lefty relievers to beat the Phillies per se. I don't think it hurts them if they were thinking along those lines. That's a team that's still got to get in, right? And they're in a very tight wild card race with it's basically 5 or 6 teams for 3 spots. They're going to jockey for position here over the next 2 months. It's the Braves, the Padres, the Mets, the Cardinals. Who am I leaving out? Somebody, the Diamondbacks. I mean, there are teams
Pittsburgh's hanging in there with that pitching. They're 2.5 out.
Pirates as well, and they should scare you with that pitching. So, I wouldn't say that the Padres were so forward thinking that they just, hey, let's load up on lefties because we know we're going to face the Phillies. They've got to get there first. I do think, that some of the Phillies' priority of going out and trying to find a right-handed hitting outfielder was in part to help them should they see like the Braves, for instance, in a short series, and you get, Chris Sale is left-handed, and you get Max Fried who's left-handed, and 2 of the 3 starters you might see in this 5-game series are going to be left-handed if it's the Braves. The Mets have Minaya and Quintana. Minaya in particular has pitched well. So I do think the Phillies were looking to maybe kind of get stronger against lefties because they know they'll face some in the playoffs. But, while I think teams were trying to to close that gap on the Phillies, I think it's probably, we may be giving them a little too much credit to think that they were targeting a lefty per se over a righty. I think the Padres were just looking to make their bullpen better, and they did. They got Jason Adam. They got the guys you mentioned. I think that's a much better bullpen now, and that's clearly how they're going to try to win games.
They made their bullpen better. The Phillies traded 2 arms out, brought 1 in. How do you see, Scott, how the Phillies bullpen is both different and better now?
Well, Estevez was kind of the main target because I think they wanted a guy that they could put at the back of the game. Like Rob Thompson is essentially named him the closer without using the word closer. He doesn't like to use the word. He likes to be flexible back there. He likes to go by matchups. He likes to have multiple guys available who could close a game. All of those things are important. But he did say Estevez is going to get majority of the 9th innings. And what that does is it slides everybody else up a notch. So in the playoffs, in particular, when Rob Thompson likes to be more aggressive in how he uses his bullpen, he can bring in Alvarado in the 6th inning. He could bring in Strom earlier in a game, knowing that he has Estevez back there to handle the 9th. He could use Hoffman in the 7th, that sort of thing. And so I think it's important for them to have whether they say he's the closer or not, it's important for them to have that guy back there who's kind of like the rock at the back of the bullpen. I don't know that they were necessarily looking to trade Seranthony Dominguez. It was what it took to get Austin Hayes. Like I said, they made a trade with another contender, and the Orioles were saying, well, if we're going to give up Austin Hayes, who's not really playing for us, we need bullpen help. And so the Phillies said, well, we have some depth in our bullpen. We really need that outfielder. So they matched up. Now, what's ironic about the whole thing is that Gregory Soto ends up getting traded to the Orioles too. And in that case, I think the Phillies looked at it and said, well, Soto is no better than the 6th option in their bullpen after getting Estevez, right? You have Estevez, Alvarado, Strom, Hoffman, Kerkering, who are all kind of ahead of Soto in the pecking order. Soto has never really embraced not pitching in high leverage spots. He was a 2-time All-Star closer in Detroit, was not a closer here. He never really sort of took to that role earlier in the game. So they said, well, if we're talking about the 6th option in our bullpen, let's take Soto, who really doesn't fit, and move him and bring in someone in Tanner Banks who fits the profile more as a number 6 option. He's really good against lefties. You can sort of see a path where, it's earlier in a game. They need to get a couple of lefties out. Thompson feels like, okay, Tanner Banks is my guy. And maybe he fits better into that spot in the bullpen. So I think that's kind of what they saw. They were able to get Banks. Then they were able to offload Soto for a couple of arms who don't necessarily replace the arms they gave up for Estevez, but they will help replenish the system a little bit. And away they go. So I think that's I think they looked for need in the bullpen. They got very specific about what they were looking for, and that was the reason they made those moves.
Scott, obviously the team's been struggling, and it's the high-end guys. You're around this team a lot. Are you seeing a team that's searching for answers, or just kind of like, hey, it's August and a long season?
Yeah, I mean, I think when this started, and we can talk about when, because it's been going on for a little while. It was, they came back from London. No JT Realmuto. Played a couple of tough American League teams on the road with the Red Sox and the Orioles. Lost both series. Chalk it up. Okay, whatever. Not full strength. Didn't play so great. Played 2 good teams, both on the road. Okay, fine. You can sort of reason that away. Then they come home. Harper gets hurt. Schwarber get hurt on the same day. You got to just sort of plow through that 10-day stretch without those guys. For the most part, that's what they did. Those guys come back. You sweep the Dodgers. And you're like, all right, back in business, right? Bad series before the break against the A's can kind of chalk that up. Come back from the break. Now they've played a good schedule, good teams, some road games, but, I think as this homestand went along, it got a little bit less easier to just sort of dismiss it away and say, okay, like, because now they're healthy again. They're back home where they play well usually. What happened this past week, right? And I think maybe by the time they left yesterday, there was some of that going on. Like, what is going on here? This isn't who we are. Why are we struggling? This is uncharacteristic of us. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. And I think today is a good day for them to kind of get away from the ballpark, not think about things, come back tomorrow away from home, about as far away as they can be, playing late at night on the East Coast, just sort of take a deep breath, go back to being who you are, and try to get back on the beam here. And it's not like it's going to be easy because, as you said, like, the Mariners are a good team on the road in Seattle. Then they go to the Dodgers, good team on the road. And Arizona, it's a good team. We know that on the road in Arizona, where the Phillies don't tend to play well usually. So it's not like this is going to be an easy trip, but I do think maybe it's a chance for them to kind of catch their breath, clear their heads, and realize, all right, we're good. This is just so it is a bad stretch, but I do think that they have to begin to ask why have they not played well now for a little while, and what do they have to do to turn it around?
We're talking with Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer. A couple more minutes with him as we take a look at some of the things going on. I know Walker threw last night. What do you see with the back end of that rotation and how that will factor into some things here? You got Phillips pitching well. I don't know that anybody had Mercado and Kobe Allard. I even was at a game where I saw Kirkering start a game. I don't know that was ever on the bingo card this year. So what are they looking at that back end of the rotation for the next couple weeks?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of mix and match. So they. From what I understand, it was not great last night with Taijuan Walker. The velocity was in like 90 to 92. I heard the splitter got hit a little bit. Those are two things that you're looking for with him as he comes back. How's this? Because I don't believe he can pitch without the splitter. So, I think that's one thing. He's going to pitch again next week in AAA. I suspect that if he pitches well, they might bring him back. But based on last night, it sounds like it's going to take more than just one more for him to be ready. But he factors into the mix as a guy who, is a veteran pitcher who can eat some innings, who can go into a rotation for you in the second half of August and the first half of September when you'd like to go to a six-man rotation if possible and kind of eat some innings and win some games. He won a lot of games last year for them. So, and I know we don't look at pitcher wins anymore, but he was a guy who was on the mound for a lot of wins. So, and he pitched well in the middle of the year. If they could get, 3 or 4 or 5 good starts from him in a six-man rotation, they'll take that. They still expect Ranger Suarez to not be too long on the injured list. I think it's possible, depending on how the next few days go, that maybe he comes off when he's eligible, and that would be, I believe, during the Diamondback series. So that would be a big boost if they can get him back. Until then, Colby Allard remains in the rotation. Tyler Phillips has been kind of like the stopper, right? Like, he's the guy who's pitching great and all of that. He starts tomorrow night in Seattle. They're going to look for another good start from him. And then I think he'll face the Dodgers in the last game there. So, he's going to get a few more starts for sure. But really, it's just kind of piecing it together until you get Suarez back. At some point, you'll get Walker for whatever it's worth. Spencer Turnbull is still a ways away, and when he comes back, I don't know if there's going to be time to stretch him out to be a starter. So, he might factor in as a multi-inning reliever. But they'll piece it together until they are back to full strength. And at some point, like I said, they'd like to get to a six-man rotation. Because I think really the key from now until the end of the season is to keep your pitchers healthy. The Phillies did very well the last 2 years to keep their starting pitching healthy and lined up in the playoffs, and it's why they made deep runs the last 2 years. That'll be paramount for them to do again. All right,
there you got to run real quick. Pache got DFA today. They're not going to bring him back, right?
Yeah, I saw he got DFA'd. I don't know. I wouldn't think so, but, their 40-man roster's full now. Not to say they can't make him, move here or there to clear a spot, but it bears watching.
Yeah, but, I know they like him.
Yeah, I did see that the Orioles let him go, so we will see.
All right, bud. Scott Lauber, everybody. Thanks, man.
All right, sounds good.
All right, there's Scott. And, of course, you can check him out at Inquirer.com, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Phillies beat writer. Yeah, Christian Pache was released DFA, so he's got to go through the waiver things, and if nobody claims him, he can either go to the minors or become a free agent because he has no options left. But I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, the Phillies like Pache. I don't know whose spot on this roster he would take right now, but man, oh man. Good stuff from Scott, though. The breakdown, breaking it all down for us here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live to find us. What do we got coming up? All right, on the way. DeCecco's here today with the division preview of the NFC North. That's Bears, that's Vikings, that's Lions, that's Packers. Oh my. We got that coming up for you. Don't forget the Hall of Fame game tonight features the Bears and the Texans. And you can listen to that game on 97.3 ESPN. This Friday, don't forget, we're live at Charlie's for a happy hour Friday. That's tomorrow at Charlie's in Summers Point, 800 Shore Road. Meet your friends at Charlie. Meet your Sports Bash friends at Charlie's. We're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. Live at Charlie's. Bud Light drafts are $2. Smashing Pumpkins, Green Day tickets. The crew's going to be there tomorrow. We're going to be giving stuff away all throughout the day, celebrating 15 years of the show. Come on out, say hello. Let us know when you started listening to the show, how long you've been listening. I always like to hear people's favorite guests. Like, who are some of your favorite insiders and guests that we bring on the show? Maybe we can bring some of them back on. By the way, tomorrow's show, Colin Thompson, former NFL tight end, will be on the show. Want to get his insight on training camp, first kind of games. You know, he's a guy who had a battle for a spot on the rosters. What is he making of the position battles that are going on at Eagles camp? We'll talk to Colin Thompson tomorrow. Jeff Kerr is on tomorrow's show as well. But we got more on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:53 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now, Josh, you're a football geek. Will you watch the Hall of Fame game tonight?
I will watch some. But
will you be ready for kickoff? Remember, it's on it's on ESPN this year, ABC.
Right.
So the debut of Jason Kelce tonight with the Monday Night Football countdown crew. Jason Kelce, Scott Van Pelt.
Yep.
So you're going to see Kelce for the first time tonight.
I think I'm going to be more interested in seeing Kelce in the pre and the halftime than I am going to be about the game, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of those things. The game comes on, you watch the kickoff, and then the next thing you know, whoever the quarterback is come jogging in, and you're like, not Caleb Williams. It's not C.J. Stroud. I'm out.
Well, and then it's not even the first team offense at all. It's like the third team offense because it's the extra preseason game.
Yeah, they have to play 4 preseason games now instead of 3 like everybody else. It used to be your 5th preseason game,
right? If
you were stuck playing the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, it's definitely a game that you watch to see what's going on, but not watching with vested interest.
Are you anticipating seeing Jalen Hurts play in any of the preseason games?
Nada.
They have their open practice tonight, right?
Yes.
He'll have more reps in this practice.
100%. And don't forget the inter squad practice against the Patriots. You'll see a lot of him in that.
Yeah. I don't need to see any Jalen Hurts. I just wonder because, last year and everything, they've kind of upped their practices and all that stuff. It seems like they're trying to change some things.
The real question is how many of the young guys get into the preseason who are competing for jobs?
How many? How many of the young guys? Good question. Sports Bash. Who are some of the most important players on the Eagles roster outside of Jalen Hurts? Everybody knows how important Hurts is, but take him out of the equation. Who are some of the most important Eagles this year for you? I'll tell you mine coming up next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning. Your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. 609-390-3907. Online, broadlees.net. Mike Gill in the Sports Bash with you. Who are the most important players outside of Jalen Hurts on the Philadelphia Eagles this season? Which players for you are the most important players for a successful season? Hit me up on the text board, 609-403-0973. There's two. John McMullen asked me an interesting question. I was on his show the other day, okay? He said he was ranking the top 25 players on the Eagles. His number one player is A.J. Brown.
I'm assuming he's just by pure talent.
Just overall football player.
Gotcha.
Best player on the Eagles, A.J. Brown.
I can see that.
I have no argument with that. I don't even know if there's a guy close.
I think Saquon could be in the conversation.
Hopefully. That's a good, if that happens, that's a great thing. I said, next year, you better hope that the answer is Jalen Carter.
Yes. Because you invested resources not just to get him, but getting him with the idea that who he is replacing.
Jalen Carter, to me, has to become the guy, the game wrecker. I used to say all the time, the game plan player. When you're putting a game plan together to play the Philadelphia Eagles, and you're trying to beat the Philadelphia Eagles defense, which player on defense does the offensive coordinator say, we have to find a way to stop 98? It used to be 91.
Right.
He's gone. And now it has to be 98. I think one of the most important players on the Eagles this year, outside of Jalen Hurts, is definitively Jalen Carter. For the Eagles, for me, to be a Super Bowl contender, Jalen Hurts has to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. He doesn't have to win the award, but man, he should be in the conversation of this guy has become a game wrecker. He looked like he was on the trajectory of being the game wrecker, and then he just absolutely disappointed down the stretch. So my number one guy who has to be or is the most important player has to be another level better than he was a year ago. Number one, Jalen Carter. Has to be on my list. Number one, not close. Don't even think there's another player in the conversation for most important.
Because the other thing with Carter is that if he plays to the level that we expect and hope and believe that he should be at, it makes everyone else's job on the defense easier. He is the kind of player, we talked about, back in 2017 when Fletcher Cox was in the conversation for one of the best interior D linemen in the game. Those guys, the Aaron Donalds, the J.J. Watts, Jalen Carter is supposed to be in that conversation because of what he's physically able to do. And if he can do anything close to those guys, it makes the pass rush more effective. It makes the linebackers have to cover less territory. It allows the defensive backs to be able to not have to be hung out on an island for as long.
Look, the Eagles had a defense for years that had good players, but the best player was Fletcher Cox.
And what he did was a domino that made everyone else better around him.
Yeah, look, you don't get, now Fletcher Cox, what made him so dominating was he got double-digit sacks. He was a guy who got 8 sacks, 10 sacks, 6 sacks from a tackle position that doesn't get a lot of sacks.
Right.
Jalen Carter had 6.5 sacks last year, halfway through the year, and then he didn't have any, the final 5-6 games of the season. So
he ran
that
out of
has to change. He, to me, is got to be the most important player. Now, there are other guys. Now, A.J. Brown, obviously, those guys are established players. I don't know that I put them in my category of important. Is that fair?
That's very fair. To me, I just jotted down a bunch of names during the last break, Mike. I don't have A.J. Brown written down. Jalen Carter, he's on my list for sure, but not A.J. Brown. Because, no offense to A.J. Brown, I know what he is. I know he's going to go out there and get his 1,400 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns or whatever his numbers are going to be. I'm not concerned about him because guess what? I've seen this team win and lose games when A.J. Brown puts up stats.
Yeah, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, those guys are established players. You kind of know what you're getting out of them.
Exactly.
I mean, you're getting your stuff out of them.
We're talking about guys that you look at and you're like, man, the Eagles need this guy to step up. And if that guy steps up, this team is going to go really far.
Well, my first guy would be
Jalen
Carter. Not even a question. That when this question was brought to my attention, I didn't blink. Jalen Carter's the first name that comes up. I'm going to give you another name that might not be on people's radar. Darius Slay.
Interesting.
Darius Slay is in that make or break type of time frame in his career.
Right.
Where he could be a guy who has one more really good year left in him, or man, we could be talking about a guy who's at the end of the line and it becomes a problem. And then the conversation begins. Is it time to replace Slay and go with Quinyon Mitchell and Isaiah Rodgers, or Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean? You know, the Eagles drafted 2 corners in the first round. You have the ammunition, or the first 2 rounds, right? You have the ammunition to make a change, but man, that's a drastic change for a player of that magnitude. So I say it's an important situation. Slay has to play well, because if he doesn't, the buzz starts to begin. You got to replace him. You got to get him off the field.
Right.
Darius Slay has been a really good player for this team, but he's not immune to age, and now he's 33 years old. That's a time where corners start to lose a step. If Darius Slay loses a step, you're going to start to hear Eagle fans calling for the young guys.
Absolutely.
And they got a lot of young guys on this team. So to me, Slay's important for multiple reasons. 1, he's a pretty good player. 2, if he doesn't play well, you have young players that fans want to see, and you don't want to get into a situation where the fans are starting to call, hey, play somebody else. So I'm going to go with Darius Slay on my list of important players.
That's interesting also because, not just because of his age, but they are trying out a bunch of guys at corner right now. They keep rotating Isaiah Rodgers and Kelee Ringo on the outside. Quinyon Mitchell is playing on the inside slot for now, but he played outside corner in college, right? So, you have to wonder how much of what we're seeing now is predicated on the idea that Darius Slay is still going to play at his level, whereas if Slay doesn't play at his level, does Fangio, who has said he's not afraid to play the younger player, he wants to play the best player available. How quick is that hook if Slay is not playing well?
Yeah, no, I think, and it's because of the magnitude of the player, who he is, and then you get that, that age thing that starts to come in as he lost a step, and then you start to hear, well, why not replace Slay with Cooper DeJean? Because I think Quinyon Mitchell's going to be on the field, so he'll be out there already. So it'll start to be, well, what about replacing Slay with Ringo? Or what about replacing him with Rodgers? Just somebody different if Slay. So that's why I think he's important for 2 reasons. You don't want to have that start to be the conversation. You don't want that to be, hey, we're winning, but we have this problem. So he would be on my list of important players.
So Slay didn't make my list, but I want to throw out to you a guy, Mike, who's also in the secondary that I think is very important. C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I think that this team had an obvious set of problems last year in the secondary, to the point where even Darius Slay himself said, man, when I was out there with young guys, we had some communication issues. Well, apparently C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a very communicative safety. He is someone who's very vocal. He calls out plays. He communicates with the other guys around him. If you get this version of C.J. Gardner-Johnson that we expect of him, this secondary will be so much better this year than last year because they had so many issues with coverages and guys not always being in the right spot and guys being caught out of position. If CJ is out there and he's doing what we think he can do, what he's capable of, that changes completely the dynamic of that secondary. Because last year, you were begging and hoping and praying that Reed Blankenship was going to save you, and he wasn't able to.
Yeah, the safety spot was definitely a problem last year. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson led the league in interceptions when he was here. He didn't make my list, but he very well could if I go back over this. And I don't know. The 5 guys I have, I feel pretty good about here. I got Jalen Carter. I got Darius Slay. And now number 3 on my list of important players is Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff is here for Reddick.
Yes.
Basically, that's a clean swap.
Replacement.
Hassan Reddick has been an all-time Eagle for you for 2 seasons. I know he's not an all-time Eagle in reality because he's only been here 2 years, but the 2 years he gave you, he almost had 30 sacks in 2 seasons with you.
He was very incredible.
He was very incredible is a great way to put it. He was flipping awesome the year that you went to the Super Bowl, and I don't know that one of the reasons last year that you weren't nearly as good is because he wasn't the same guy in terms of being a game wrecker. He was 100%. Just a little bit off from the year before. He started the year with the thumb injury. He ended up getting 10 sacks or so. There were some reports that maybe he improvised a little bit because he was, hunting sacks. That being said, he had 11 sacks last year. He had 11, 16 the year before. I said he almost had 30 sacks for you in the 2 seasons he was in Philadelphia.
It's pretty good.
Bryce Huff better be able to get to the quarterback. To me, you flipped out your best pass rusher, and you took a wild card shot. Now, I get it. Reddick's 29 years old. I get the math game. I think the Eagles were in a tough spot with him. I wouldn't want to have to pay him either, and apparently the Jets don't either now.
Right.
So I totally understand the swap. I think that makes Huff pretty darn important to this team's defense, is his ability to pick up the slack of what Reddick was able to generate for you in terms of rushing the quarterback the last 2 seasons.
And don't forget, every time this team has been successful in any era of Eagles football in this century, Jim Johnson, Jim Schwartz, Jonathan Gannon, they all coordinated defenses that got to the biggest game of the year. Why? Because they had pass rushers who could get to the quarterback. And that is a key for this team and this organization. And you don't let Hassan Reddick go if you don't think that Bryce Huff can pick up that slack. Because guess what? BG, he ain't going to give it to you at his age and his progression. There is no guarantee that Josh Sweat is going to be able to go out there and do it. And you said it earlier, Mike, just because Jalen Carter can get you 10 sacks doesn't mean you should be leaning on him exclusively for the pass rush.
Nope. Huff, to me, definitively is the guy up front that they targeted, they brought in, and they replaced their best guy with. So, to me, the pressure's on him to be the most important guy up front. By the way, the thing with Reddick is going to be really interesting to see if he ends up sitting this out. He's starting to get fined some real money.
And remember, the Eagles' conditional draft pick is dependent on him getting playing time and sacks this year. So, there's part of the Eagles that are saying, can you get on the field so we can get this comp back?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, give me another important guy.
On my list, Mike, I got Devin White. I think that the Devin White pickup was a Vic Fangio telling Howie Roseman, give me this guy, I can make it work. Because we've heard the reports out of Tampa that they had soured on him at that point. His first 2 years in the NFL, he was a dynamo. He was a freak of nature. He helped them win a championship down there. He was everything you hope for as a top 10 draft pick in the NFL. And it's not that he was bad last year, but he wasn't the same player. He came here on a prove-it deal. Now, prove it, Devin White. We need linebacker help. We needed an upgrade. Zach Cunningham, he wasn't enough last year. Shaq Leonard didn't cut it. Devin White is a guy that needs to be effective because you go through every single one of Vic Fangio's defenses. It was Mike Peterson with the Colts. It was guys like Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis with the 49ers. It was guys like, your Roquan Smiths and your guys like that with the Bears. Everywhere he goes, he's got dynamic athletes playing linebacker who have been effective. Devin White fits that mold. Now he's got to put up or shut up.
I don't have a lot of optimism for Devin White. I honestly, I don't think that he's going to be awful, but I think his best days are, 2019 was the last time he was really, really good. And that wasn't even, I don't know. Devin White to me is a total wild card. Don't know what to think. Don't know what Vic Fangio wants to do with him. And the linebacker spot as a whole, Zach Baun, Ben Van Sumeren. Really, this is what you're going in with here and hoping that that crew. So, yeah, Devin White is the most accomplished of this crew. Not optimistic. I was very high on Dean last year, soured on him big time. Just can't stay healthy. But even when he played, he wasn't the player that I had anticipated.
Yeah, he wasn't as impactful as you were hoping for. And that's why it's a little interesting to see that they're doing this 3-man workaround where it's White, Baun, and then Dean rotating in. And you have to wonder, as we get closer to the season, does that rotation of 3 turn into 2, or do you go into the year trying to get all 3 in a game?
Don't count Trotter out. I'll say that. Chris Trapasso over at CBSSports.com, I wrote an article about this yesterday. He did his all-rookie teams, and the first-team all-rookie team linebacker he has is Jeremiah Trotter. So I was intrigued by that to say, okay, now, and I'm not saying this because he wrote it. I was saying it more because the spot's up for grabs. Right. If he has that, if he's saying, hey, this guy could be first team, best rookie linebackers. There was a lot of good rookie linebackers taken. Junior Colston was one of the guys in there. The kid from Green Bay. So there's a couple other linebackers that were drafted higher than him. And he said, no, this is the guy with the most talent. I'm intrigued by the possibility of what he can bring to the table. Very instinctual guy. He's just smaller. We were talking about this the other day with McMullen, is that Trotter is the guy who has the instincts and has all that stuff. He's just small. Unlike TJ Edwards, who had the instincts and everything, but he was a big guy. He was a big linebacker. He just didn't run all that well at the combine, and that's why he didn't end up getting drafted. So it's a little bit of a different situation to say, well, TJ Edwards is an undrafted guy because his numbers were bad. Edwards was a big guy who was I think overlooked because of the speed thing. Trotter's a smaller guy. He's going to really have to use his instincts and stuff and be in the right techniques and all that stuff. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out there. Number 4 for me.
Really quick, if I could jump on that really quick about Trotter Jr. 1, at Clemson, he did not play a pure linebacker position. He was used as kind of more of that joker, where he would do a lot of pass rushing. So I'm curious to see, does he become a secondary pass rusher for the Eagles? And number 2, according to the guys who've been covering the team at the practices this last couple weeks, Mike, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. has been following Vic Fangio around, asking a lot of questions. So keep that in mind.
Number 4 for me, I'm going to go with a pretty obvious one here, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
You paid him the money. Look, think about it like this. Miles Sanders had 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns 2 years ago. That's an awesome year. 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. It's an awesome season. Last year, DeAndre Swift went over 1,000 yards rushing. Saquon Barkley, theoretically, is better than both of those guys. One guy got 1,000. The other guy had 1,200. What should the ceiling be for Saquon Barkley? If I'm paying him that kind of money, he's pretty damn important to me. And that says to me, I want more production than I got out of the 2 guys I paid no money to. So, with all that said, Saquon Barkley makes my list as now, A.J. Brown doesn't make my list because I 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, fine. Smith, I know what I'm getting, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, somewhere in that range. I don't know what I'm getting from Barkley. I don't know what the game plan is for him, but I know I paid him a lot of money, and I know what I got from the previous 2 running backs that preceded him here. He better outperform those 2 guys. Otherwise, I overpaid for a position that I generally don't pay a lot of money for.
I will not get over the fact that we did not expect this guy to be here. I think that's a big part of this conversation. There was no point in time where we all sat down and we were like, the Eagles are going to sign this offseason? Saquon Barkley. That was more something that developed over the course of weeks, where you heard guys like the Michael Lombardis of the world, and then others saw bringing up the idea of it. And then it slowly materialized. It became a reality. And I keep going back to, Mike, if you're bringing this guy in, you have to have a plan for him. You didn't just bring him in because he's the fanciest car in the lot. You brought him in because Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni both are like, look, in the offense that we are reformatting and redeveloping, he is going to have a major role. And he needs to have an impact on the Eagles in some level similar to Christian McCaffrey in order for him to be worth the money.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, you pay that kind of money. Again, I go back to what I said. 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns is what Miles Sanders had 2 years ago. I would almost say you have to outdo that.
Yeah. Because if you don't, we got a lot of problems.
No, I don't know about a lot of problems. I just feel like you overpaid for a guy. I mean, because I could get 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns from Miles Sanders. I'd have to pay him $30 million.
Well, how much that was the offensive line, too?
Well, I don't have a lot of questions about the offensive line. I think the offensive line should be approaching that. I don't know if it's going to be as good. Put it this way. It should be better than any line he ran behind in New York.
That is true.
Yeah.
I have Saquon on my list as well, and I'll just add one more element in. I've heard Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan talk about this on Football at 4, Mike. We have been tricked into thinking the Eagles were going to use the running back more in the past as a pass receiving target. We know that Kellen Moore has used running backs as a pass receiving target in his past. We can only hope that Saquon actually breaks that mold and finally gets to be the first running back under Sirianni's tenure that actually gets to be a receiving running back, because you know what? How much that would open up this offense if he is.
Well, as long as Sirianni's not calling the plays, I don't know that he would make him a big part of the offense, but maybe Kellen Moore will do that. All right, number 5 for me. We just kind of hinted at it, the offensive line. I'm going Cam Jurgens as my number 5 guy. I mean, you're taking over for an Eagles legend. You are the anchor of that line. You've had 12 years of him snapping the football almost every single play, making all the calls. And quite frankly, you know, it does kind of fit well for a new coordinator to come in here, because you might have to call plays completely different because Jason Kelce's not here anymore. There might be plays that you have to rip out of the playbook and throw in the trash can because Kelce's not here anymore. I don't know what that means for the tush-push, right? But I mean, just second-level stuff where he pulls out and gets to that second. There's not a lot of centers who can snap the ball and then, bang, get down the line, take off, and then get up the field and make 2 blocks.
Heck no.
That's something that he excelled in. So I guess Kellen Moore not being here in the past is somewhat helpful, that he didn't have to call plays with Kelce and then say, well, I can't call that play anymore because Kelce's not here. He never got to experience what Kelce brings to the table here. So Jurgens is obviously on this list as one of the most important players for the Eagles this year.
Yeah, and listen, I'm happy that Sirianni and Howie Roseman, everybody's pointing out the fact that he learned study habits and practice habits and everything from Kelce, but he's still got to go out and execute. And Kelce was a refined machine by the time those last few years happened. There was a time, Mike, remember, people wanted him run out of town. He was not a Hall of Famer his entire career, Jason Kelce. So I hope people have the kind of patience with Cam Jurgens that they had to have with Kelce, because guess what? Kelce was not Kelce his first few years.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Those are the most important Eagles players for us. Who are your most important Eagles players this season? That's just a few. There's more. We can kind of riff on them as well. 609-403-0973. Coming up, the month of July is in the books. Wait till you hear the division leaders and the top NL contenders records in the month of July. That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Plus, the most impressive team at the MLB deadline might be the biggest problem for the Phillies That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Mike Trout has 378 career home runs. He's got 954 runs batted in. 235 of his home runs are solo home runs. He is by far, of any player with 350 home runs, the player with the fewest amount of runs batted in by like 75. His body and the Angels have historically let Mike Trout down. And I got to say, I don't think it's such a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame at this point for Mike Trout that it once was.
That was Chris Carlin on Carlin versus Joe. Is he right? Is Mike Trout a guy that seemingly was such a lock to be a Hall of Famer? Are we starting to wonder where Millville's Mike Trout will be in the Hall of Fame? I got to imagine that he's still kind of a shoo-in. It kind of caught me a little off guard when I heard Chris Carlin say that. He kind of mentioned the numbers. Mike Trout, 299, 380-plus home runs, 954 RBIs, 11-time All-Star, 3 MVP. That's where the boost comes. I was looking at this earlier today. Guys who have injury problems that limited their careers. Ken Griffey Jr. hit 630 homers, so that's a big 1,800 RBI. He only won 1 MVP. Trout has 3. So if Mike Trout can get over the 400 home run plateau, over 1,200 RBI, I mean, and he's only 32. I mean, even if he's got a couple seasons where he's still kind of battling through injuries, I would have to think Mike Trout's 3 MVPs get him in.
I think if you said that Mike Trout retired right now, there could be that conversation Chris Carlin brought up. But like you said, he's 32 years old. At some point, he's going to come back and he's going to be Mike Trout.
Yeah, he would be right around like a guy like Harold Baines, who had 384 home runs. He's already at that number. 289 hitter. Harold Baines is in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's got numbers that already match Harold Baines, Larry Walker, Jim Rice. He's already, and he has 3 MVPs. Come on, Chris Carlin. Mike Trout's a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. It's a Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco is up next.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
We're never satisfied. That hunger for more. That hunger for more. I have it. Everyone has it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course you can check that out on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Tonight is the open practice for the Philadelphia Eagles. They'll be at Lincoln Financial Field, and they are 1 week away from their opener to next Friday against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll take a look at our division previews. We'll continue them with maybe one of the more intriguing divisions in football. You have the Lions, who won last year, the Packers, who almost made it to the Super Bowl even after going 9-8, and 2 teams that finished 7-10. One looks to have excitement. The other one could be a wild card. Let's take a look at them now with our buddy Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com as he looks at our NFC North preview here on Football at 4. What's going on, Andrew? Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
All is well, man. And, of course, the NFC North has some interesting teams because obviously the Lions are the new kid on the block in terms of the hierarchy here. You had Minnesota, who kind of ruled this division for a couple of years there. Let's take a look at them first. Way new look. No more Kirk Cousins. We'll start with that. J.J. McCarthy, will he be the guy that takes the first snaps for the Vikings, or do you like Sam Darnold to win that job?
I think Sam Darnold will probably initially start out as the starter there, but I think eventually he's going to give way to J.J. McCarthy, just knowing that they're not really in position to win anything, and neither quarterback are really going to do much, but I think you need to get J.J. McCarthy those reps to get his feet wet, and then next season is really where he's going to make that leap.
got some interesting weapons. Aaron Jones is there now. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson. Minnesota's offense, their offensive line has constantly been a problem for them with all those skill players here. But does Darnold have enough to work with to make them interesting?
I think so. Aaron Jones is a really good pass receiving running back, and you have Justin Jefferson among the league's best wide receiver. T.J. Hawkinson, somebody who's been banged up a lot, but I think he can really help, whether it be Darnold or whether it be J.J. McCarthy as a mid-range option, security blanket, red zone threat. So I think they have enough offensively.
All right, go on the defensive side of the ball, which is where they went with Dallas Turner, their first-round pick there. This is an interesting team. A couple of years ago, they had a really good defense. Mike Zimmer was the head coach. He's in Dallas now. Andrew Van Ginkel was their big pickup there, a guy who had a lot of sacks for Vic Fangio last year. What do you like about the Vikings defense this season?
I like it. You know, they have two good edge rushers in, Dallas Turner, and you mentioned Van Ginkel. I think they have some decent pieces on the back end, but I think they should be able to manufacture some pressure, but I just don't know if they're going to if they have enough in totality to really, especially in terms of depth, to really make some noise in the division.
Yeah, they've got obviously Van Ginkel, who they brought over coming off of an injury. We'll see what he brings to the table. Byron Murphy is out there at corner. It's an interesting team, the Vikings. I guess, they're kind of starting over at the quarterback. If they had a better, more established quarterback there, would you like this team more?
Yeah, I absolutely would, because they do have enough weapons, I think, to really, under normal circumstances, they would be able to challenge for that top spot. But I just don't think, with so much uncertainty there at quarterback, they don't have someone who can step right in and elevate the offense. They're going to probably endure some growing pains, whether it be Sam Darnold not being consistent, throwing interceptions and committing turnovers, or whether it's J.J. McCarthy trying to find his way. It's almost kind of like you're wasting Aaron Jones, who I believe is still one of the NFL's most underrated running backs, who can really be a threat as a receiver, and you're certainly wasting Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're certainly wasting his big years there as well. We'll see what happens with J.J. McCarthy. Can he step in and become the next franchise quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings? Well, the Bears hope they finally have found a franchise quarterback. You got to go way back for the Bears to have a franchise quarterback. But they draft Caleb Williams, number 1. He's got DeAndre Swift. They got him receivers and Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. This is a team, DJ Moore, by the way. This is a team that could really be interesting offensively.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to come down to Caleb Williams. Obviously, they believe in him, and rightfully so. He has an immense talent. Sometimes young quarterbacks aren't able to hit the ground running immediately, but he's certainly going to have weapons to support him. You look at DJ Moore, who just got a $110 million contract over 4 years. You got DeAndre Swift, who I believe was criminally misutilized here in Philadelphia, and you saw how quickly the Bears pounced to get him in free agency. I think that they have a lot there for him to be able to really maximize that. Rome Odunze was a receiver who I really liked in the draft. Good deep ball player, and him paired with DJ Moore, I think, are really going to help. And then Cole Kmet's still there as well. Cole Kmet's somebody who every year I keep waiting for him to take that leap, and that hasn't happened yet. But I think he should see a ton of targets, especially with working with a young quarterback.
Yep. Obviously, Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, both first-round picks. You'll see if Caleb Williams, I don't want, like C.J. Stroud had a monster year, but if he is more in that range, this Bears offense could be really fun to watch with Swift, Moore, Allen, Odunze. You mentioned Kmet there. They have offensive line problems. That could be the downfall of them. But, man, they got some interesting weapons on the offensive side of the ball. On defense, man, they picked up Sweat. They went out and got T.J. Edwards last year. Obviously, Tremaine Edmonds is there. Jalen Johnson, a name that keeps coming up. They signed Kevin Byard. This is a pretty intriguing defense. They played much better the second half of the year.
Yeah, I really like Montez Sweat. It's going to start up there up front, and he's somebody that I think will be able to generate some pressure. He has complementary pieces around him. T.J. Edwards, of course, the former Philadelphia Eagle, really good downhill player. Is getting a little bit better in playing in space, but I think that he is someone who was obviously undervalued here in Philadelphia, but has turned into quite a nice linebacker for them. And on the back end, Jalen Johnson, I've said this many times before, I believe he's one of the best corners in the NFL, and he's certainly being compensated as such. And I think this is a season where he really becomes more of a household name. He was a second-round pick a few seasons ago. Even still, I think he's still not necessarily mentioned in the same breath as the Sauce Gardners of the world. He should be, and I think this year he's going to prove it.
7-10 for the Bears last year. Can they turn things around and become a surprise team? That will be a fun offense to watch if they do. We'll take a look as the season goes on to Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. The Green Bay Packers, 9-8. Not an impressive regular season, but man, they turned it on. You can make an argument that Jordan Love essentially got paid for 2 huge playoff games. He did play very well in the regular season, but Love got paid. They made it to the NFC Championship game, and then they go get Josh Jacobs. They got all those young receivers in Watson and Reed. Obviously, they're putting a lot on the shoulders of Love, but can this Green Bay team, they went 9-8 last year, can they improve on that and be a real title contender?
I think they can. I really do. And the reason why I'm so confident is because I really believe in the quarterback, Jordan Love. Obviously, he just did it for one season. You like to see it for more, have a larger sample size to make an assessment. But what I've seen from him is somebody who he grew in a big way, over 4,000 yards passing. Sometimes players just pass the eye test, and he was able to make every single throw. It seemed like the entire offense was at his disposal, but he had the full menu that he was working off of. I thought he made receivers better, and we look at Romeo Doubs in particular. I thought he helped him take a big leap forward. Christian Watson is somebody who has struggled with injuries, but he is a big-time player. Jaden Reed is a player who I have talked about quite a bit. I liked him a lot coming out of the draft out of Michigan State. Kind of reminds me a lot of Randall Cobb, which it lends itself to being a really dynamic in-space type of player, good stop-start suddenness, and I think this is another year where he's going to really take a big step forward with in his second season with Jordan Love.
Yeah, and they went out and got some offensive line help in the draft. Jordan Morgan, we'll see what factor they have up front for the offensive line for Green Bay. On defense, they also added Edrin Cooper, the linebacker there. There's a pretty interesting defense last year as well. Preston Smith, Jair Alexander. They signed McKinney from the Giants. So this is an interesting defense that they bring to the table this year, and obviously with Super Bowl aspirations, it's going to need to be better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of their secondary, adding Xavier McKinney, who was the top safety available in the free agent market. Jair Alexander has inside-outside versatility, really fluid player. I really like him. He's tough. He doesn't back down from a challenge. You mentioned Edrin Cooper. He was, I believe, my second-rated linebacker. Junior Colson, of course, who went to the Chargers, was my top-rated linebacker. But I know a lot of fans here in Philadelphia. Trust me, I've gotten plenty of messages and, on Twitter and such about it. But they wanted Edrin Cooper because of his range, sideline to sideline, prowess and all those good things. But he's gonna really help that defense pretty early. Good coverage player as well. So they've really made some notable improvements on all three levels.
All right, the Lions, 12-5 last season, and obviously this Lions team now comes into a season with much more expectations. Terry and Arnold, they added Rick Strahl, 2 guys on the defensive side of the ball, which suggests they think they have a pretty good offense. They've been added to the offense the last couple of years. Goff and obviously Montgomery and Gibbs, they took him in the draft a year ago. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a top 5 receiver. Jameson Williams, people forget about him because he had the injury and suspension and stuff. Sam Laporta. I mean, man, there's not a lot of holes on this offense.
No, and Jared Goff he's the point guard, and he's probably the perfect quarterback for that offense because he doesn't really have to do a whole lot. He just has to take care of the football, know how to facilitate, see it, and throw it. And he has a lot of playmakers. You ran through all of them. I think Sam Laporta is someone who I'm really intrigued to see this year because I think he's going to be even better. And all of a sudden, you're going to see his name mentioned in the top 4 or 5 tight ends in the league because he is that good, and I think he's going to really rack up some red zone touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, I've said on your program, Mike, that I believe going into the draft that he was the better overall running back compared to Bijan Robinson, and I meant that. I was pretty strong in my support there, and he really hit the ground running as a rookie. He can do it pretty much everything you need him to. Eagles rookie Will Shipley said that he's been watching a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs, and he wants to do a lot of those same things. There's not a lot that Jahmyr Gibbs can't do, especially as a receiver, and you can line him up anywhere. So I like what they have there.
One thing, we don't jive a lot into when we do these previews is the offensive line. Generally, hey, they have a good offensive line. They don't have a good offensive. This might be the best offensive line in football.
Frank Ragnow, right? He's still there?
Yep, Ragnow's the center back. He has had some injuries.
Probably the best center. Probably the best overall center in the NFL. I would say.
Yep.
That's where it all starts.
And they probably have the best offensive line. Penei Sewell, right. Glasnow's still there. Their line that's the one thing that makes them dangerous. They got all those skill players, but their line. You've had teams in the past like Minnesota, great skill players, terrible offensive line. This team has the full package. But what about their defense?
They're going to be a force, man.
Yeah, and then we go to the defensive side of the ball. They just beefed up the secondary. I know, talking about Arnold, Brian Branch, they took Aiden Hutchinson now in his third season. This defense now has some young talent to run around.
And a lot of players that I was really high on in particular in the draft. Brian Branch a couple years ago, Terrion Arnold. I still had Quinyon Mitchell higher, right above Terrion Arnold, but I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against an Alabama defensive back. He should be able to kind of be a plug and play for you. Rakestraw is a player who's a little bit of a longer, less physical player on the outside. Went to Missouri. Good wingspan. He's been nicked up in the past. And between him and Arnold, I'm just not sure how well. They don't run particularly well. So I think their back end could be exploited a little bit if you're really kind of splitting hairs here and looking for a way to attack the Lions defense. I think that might be the way to do it, try and get vertical on them. But Jack Campbell, the linebacker, Jack Campbell is a monster at that second level. He racks up tackles. They really have a very complete defense.
Yep, and Hutchinson now in year 3, he's plus 1,000 to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think there's a ton of value there. He could get that award. He's that good of a player. Detroit 12-5 last year. All right, Lions, Packers, Bears, and Vikings. Good division, solid division, a lot of storylines. How do you see it?
I have the Lions at 1, Packers at 2, Bears at 3, Vikings coming in last at 4.
All right, and are you a Packers guy this year? Do you think that they were 9-8 last year, kind of up and down season, but do you think they're now more in that 12-5 range?
I do. I'm very adamant about that simply because of Jordan Love. I think he's just going to continue to pick up where he left off. They've added some more impactful players on the defensive side, Mike, that I think are really going to be able to complement it. So they're more equipped, they're better equipped, I should say, to make some headway in the NFC. And I think that 12-5 range should be within reach.
All right, Andrew DeCecco, real quick. I know the Eagles at the Link tonight. Probably first chance for a lot of people to see some things over there. What are a couple of things or players you're keeping an eye on at the open practice?
Well, it would be easy for me to tell you Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Carter. But I'm going to throw out a few names here that I think a lot of folks are going to come away with tonight very intrigued by. Rookie running back Will Shipley. You and I spoke about him yesterday. He's been a really effective pass catcher. I think you're going to see his explosiveness right off the bat, and I think he's really going to endear himself to the fan base once they get a close look at him. Jalix Hunt, the third-round pick, is a very twitchy, athletic, bendy edge rusher. He's had some good moments in camp. I know he's a little bit raw coming from Houston Christian, but he showed well in the Senior Bowl. You're going to see what the Eagles saw and why they took him where they did tonight, because you just see the movements and the traits. Might take him a little while to get acclimated and be able to really be a prominent contributor, but you're going to be able to see the qualities that they saw. I would also say Isaiah Rodgers. Isaiah Rodgers is a player who I think has been, aside from Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell, I think he's going to be the starter opposite Darius Slay. He's been that good. It's been really close with him and Keely Ringo, but Isaiah Rodgers, you'll see the quickness, the ability to close and have that recovery speed. He's going to get his hand on a lot of footballs. He's had a lot of PBUs in training camp. You'd like to see him convert some of those into interceptions. could be tonight that he gets his first one. There has not been an interception in training camp, but those are three players right there that are kind of off the beaten path, but someone you should all keep an eye on. And then, of course, I'm going to throw out one of my favorite dark horses, who I've mentioned to you a couple of different times, Ben Van Sumeren, who has the inside track right now at that fifth linebacker spot. Immensely athletic. You're going to see the size. You're going to see the speed. You're going to see the ferocity chasing running backs and closing quickly. And I think he's going to be on more people's radars after today.
Good stuff. Real quick, I know you wrote a piece a little while ago over at InsideTheBirds.com, talking about Britton Covey, and I'm just kind of intrigued to see what you think his role this year. We get people texting in all the time. Ask Andrew about Britton Covey.
I love that. I'm always down to talk Britton Covey.
Well, is he have a legitimate chance to have a role in the slot on this team? I know a lot of people looking at Paris Campbell, but where is he in that battle?
I'll tell you what, Mike, and you and I, and I've written about this and I've spoke about this, and I'm really, I've remained pretty strong on my opinion here. Britton has a lot more offensive ability than he's really been given the opportunity to showcase. And last summer that may have changed things, but he had the hamstring injury and he really was nursing that all summer and didn't have that opportunity. But you're talking about a receiver who all through training camp this summer, the separation, the short area quickness, his suddenness in and out of breaks, there aren't a lot of corners that can cover him. He presents a difficult matchup because how quick his feet are, because of how technical he is as a route runner. He doesn't have the size, but he's able to separate with pretty much regularity. And I even got a chance to see him get vertical on one route on Saturday when he beat Quinyon Mitchell. And Quinyon was right in his hip pocket. The coverage was perfect. But Britton and Jalen were on the same page, and Britton reeled it in. So I think that shows you his evolution as a receiver, because you could sense that he really is looking at this opportunity as something that he anticipates seizing. I don't know exactly how or where he fits in the equation, because Paris Campbell is more of the prototypical number 3, but you cannot rule out Britton Covey.
All right, Andrew DeCecco, check out his coverage of tonight's practice over at InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, here on Football at 4, we'll be talking about next week, by the way, the NFC East. We'll be getting you ready for that. And the Eagles open up the preseason in Baltimore against the Ravens. Friday night, you can hear the game next Friday night, I should say, on 97.3 ESPN. All right, buddy, we'll talk to you then.
Take care, Mike.
Andrew, always great to talk a little football with. As we get the football ready tonight, the Hall of Fame game is on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the 97.3 Eagles station for you guys down the shore is 97.3 ESPN. We've got that coming up next Friday. Tonight we got the Hall of Fame game. We've got you out there, and we've got Nick's Nuggets on the way. Nick Earnshaw's back with this edition of the Nuggets coming up in about 6 minutes from now. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadlee's, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation for generations. 609-390-3907, or visit them online at broadlees.net. What does Nick have in his Nuggets today? How many packs of Nuggets does he have? That's on the other side. Don't go away. More Sports Bash coming up on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
427 Sports Bash this hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907, online at broadlees.net. Nick Earnshaw is back for another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. He'll be live with me tomorrow at Charlie's. You can see the Nuggets live. And, of course, we hope to see many of our listeners out there celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. $2 Bud Lights. We're going to have tickets to see Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day. And we'll have all sorts of other prizes all throughout the day. Stop out to Charlie's, 800 Shore Road in Summers Point. There's Nick Earnshaw, who has today's Nick's Nuggets.
What's going on, Mike? I can't wait for tomorrow. We got a 4-pack together at Charlie's. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Now, are they going to provide us with some nuggets at Charlie's? I mean,
probably tenders.
Wings?
Probably some tenders over the nuggets.
Tenders? All right. What about some drums or flats? I mean, are they going to provide that too?
I was there. Our baseball team was there Tuesday night after practice. I ordered the wings. And it was like a half and half. It was a half drum, half flat.
All right, so I know that we're going to be splitting them tomorrow. You'll take the drums. I'll take all the flats. That's cool with you?
And I got to say, I went through all the drums, and I was disappointed because I had flats left, and I said, man, I need more drums.
Yeah, you need someone to finish those off. Tomorrow, I'll be the guy for you to finish those flats off. Can't wait. It's good. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, a bunch of listeners come out, enjoy the 15 years of Sports Bash. Is a big deal. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to join you for that show tomorrow. All right, let's get into the nuggets of today, Thursday. We're going to start with the Philadelphia Phillies. Obviously, they get swept by the New York Yankees yesterday. They're off today. But, man, nugget number one, Mike, they're starting a long road trip here coming up here in the month of August. And, not just the road trip, okay? They have 16 out of their 27 games in August are on the road, okay? 7 out of those nine teams are 500 and above. The only 2 teams that aren't above 500 are the Washington Nationals and the Miami Marlins. They play the Braves twice. They got the Mariners obviously coming up this weekend, but they have some tough teams they are playing, and they are in a rut right now, Mike. So, you heard my question of the day there during the update. A lot of fans are worried, and they've seen the Eagles collapse. They've seen the Flyers collapse. I don't think the Phillies are that type of team to collapse when it's only August. It's August 1st. There's still plenty of baseball left. There's still 6.5 games up on the Atlanta Braves at this moment. But I get why there's cause for concern because of how tough the schedule is coming down the stretch here in the last part of the dog days of summer. Mike, I got to say, the Phillies, tough road trip coming up with all those numbers that I threw at you.
It is. And listen, I think fans have a reason to be concerned, not so much whether the Phillies are going to make the playoffs or not. But if your ultimate goal is, I want to see this team win a World Series, and the window is closing with this bunch of guys. Schwarber, 1 year on his deal after this. Castellanos, 1 year on his deal after this. Harper and Turner obviously here for the long haul, but how many more prime years are you getting out of them? So this group of guys, Real Muto, starting to get older. This group of guys offensively, the reason this team is struggling right now is the same reason you lost in the playoffs the last couple of years, is because the guys you paid the buco bucks, the guys that all have, the 9-digit incomes, they're all struggling. And that's why you've lost in the playoffs against the Astros, and it's why you lost in the playoffs against the Diamondbacks, and it's why you're struggling right now. So I think fans are seeing this and saying, oh, man, I've seen this story before. So, yeah, they might turn it around and win the division and get into the playoffs, but you're just waiting for the offense to go cold again.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought at the deadline, that Dave Dombrowski may have said, I need to find somebody that can interject some life into this middle of the lineup. Not the back end of the lineup, the middle of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, right? It used to be, all right, September, that's kind of when they collapse. Every single year, they're not going to make the playoffs. It's a little different story now. It's just like, all right, when are all the bats going to go cold? Isn't it the weirdest thing that every single one of these high-paying guys, whether it's Schwarber, Real Muto, Harper, Turner, they all go cold at the same time. Listen, they're a cohesive unit. Clearly shows that they're a total cohesive unit. They're all in this together. I mean, they're all going cold at the same time, and they all get hot at the same time. It seems like it's a very odd phenomenon. But yeah, I mean, this is a tough stretch coming up here, and they are really struggling mightily. Listen, you needed some life to be injected in you. Austin Hayes hasn't really given you that, right? Like he's been okay. He hit a home run the other day. Great. Was warning track power yesterday against the Yankees, but I don't think it was enough. And I'm with you. Like they could have gotten a bat to the middle of the lineup that could have helped this team. I mean, the most perfect answer to me was Brent Rooker. I mean, that was the obvious choice. Adding Rooker would have been the most power you could have gotten at the deadline. I think for the most part, I mean, he showed you when you played him just a couple of weeks ago, so before the All-Star break. But yeah, they didn't get that infusion of something different for the most part into that lineup this past week and after the deadline. And it kind of showed. So they're going to have to find a way to just get out of this rut and continue to get at bats and, get back to where they usually are. But I don't think this will make them kind of go backwards, right? I think they'll just continue to plug forward. They'll find their way out of it. This is a really good team still. And that's why I don't think Dave Dombrowski went out and got a gigantic bat, right? Because he believes in the guys he already has. But if they all go cold, you're in a lot of problems.
Yeah, and Hayes, look, he's played 5 games, 238, 4 home runs, 1 home run, 4 RBI. One guy I brought up has hit 4 home runs since he's been traded. I'm just saying. Yeah, Jazz has been great. Jazz has been really good. To me, Hayes was just a accoutrement. He wasn't the main dish at the trade deadline for an offense that maybe needed, listen, they didn't need a better hitter than Bryce Harper or Trey Turner or Kyle Schwarber. They just needed someone who kind of fit into you mentioned Jazz. I know we've been laughing about him the last couple of days. He's a left-handed bat. I liked a lot of left-handed bats out there, but I don't see a left-handed bat just doesn't fit this lineup. They are too left-handed heavy, and to bring in another left-handed bat, I think is a problem. There were left-handed guys that we liked, in the past. We talked about the guy from the Cubs. Bellinger. Bellinger's a guy I like, left-handed. Now, he hits lefties okay, but still, just too many lefties in the lineup. They needed that right-handed guy that is a consistent bat in the lineup. Not a guy who hits 240 with strikeouts. You need a guy who was more of a 285, kind of like a Bohm. You need another type of Bohm who doesn't strike out a lot, who puts the ball in play, uses all fields, somebody in that type of realm. And I think that's what they think Hayes is. But for me, Hayes is hitting at the bottom of the lineup here. If you had him hitting in the 5-hole, that would have been a different story. I think that's where they needed some help.
Yeah, they added a guy just to he's basically a platoon player. He is what he is. When he first got traded here, I was like, maybe they'll platoon him and Marsh in left, and then Rojas is kind of center, but they're going to platoon Marsh and Rojas in center field. It's funny because you sent me the article today, about Jazz. It was in the New York Post, about David Sampson, the former, Miami executive, talking about Jazz. He's not a Jazz fan whatsoever. We've talked about that. He's been on record plenty of times saying how much he's not a big fan of Jazz. But when he got to that New York Yankees team, I know it's only been a couple games. I know he's, batting under 250 for his career. He's had a lot of injuries as well. He's missed time in the 4 years and now his 5th year, in the league. But he's infused some energy into that Yankees lineup, and they were a team that was struggling, right? They were going through a little bit of a rut there, losing some games and going streaking a little bit. And now it's kind of flipped over to the Phillies, kind of what the Yankees were doing, but they added a little bit of talent and energy to that clubhouse, and boom, they're starting to go streaking now the other way and winning some games. So the Phillies didn't do that. Austin Hayes is a 9-hole hitter. He's a platoon type of player, even though he's going to be starting left field all the time. So they didn't go out and get that name that was out there. I thought Rooker could have added some energy to this team. And, I know defense, who cares? Who cares if his defense is great in left field? But they didn't go out and do that. They didn't make that big-time move, and we'll see. Did it pay off? Did the little moves that they did make? Estevez is great for the back end of the bullpen, but that hitter, should they have gone out and got one? We'll see as the season plays out. If they get bounced in the NLDS or LCS, it might make a difference.
Yeah, listen, the Yankees can go streaking in August. Let's see if they go streaking in October. Yes. If that's the case, we'll revisit this conversation. Look, there wasn't a player that got moved offensively that you feel that the Phillies missed out on.
No.
I don't know what the ask was on Rooker. He would have been a guy that I would have liked, but there wasn't a guy that got traded that I said, I would have made that deal. It was a seller's market more than a buyer's market.
Yeah, there wasn't, there was names out there that were Luis Robert was also thrown out there. He hasn't had a great season as well. So I'm sure the asking price was high for those guys and Robert as well as Rooker. So, that's probably why they didn't go out and do it, but we'll see. Listen, they got a tough road trip coming up. Can they get out of this rut? We'll see. Hopefully fans aren't in panic mode just yet, A lot of baseball to be played. It's a little early. Maybe you get it out of the way here in July and early August, that rut, and maybe you're okay heading down to the playoffs. We'll see what happens.
Hey, listen, we were talking about this earlier. The three division leaders and the Braves, the 4 highest teams in the National League, every one of them had a losing record in the month of July. Every single one of them. So everybody, it's a long season. I think everybody has a propensity to kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit. You can't just keep going and going and going. Sometimes you have to kind of pull off a little bit. And with that, though, Atlanta didn't gain a lot of ground on you because they had a losing record. So it timed out okay that when the Phillies, now look, they got to pull out of this thing soon. You're 6.5 up. The Phillies 6.5 is still the biggest division lead, in all of baseball. They have the biggest division lead in all of baseball, 6.5 games. So just put some perspective on that as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you play Atlanta twice now this month. So those games are going to be extremely important. Like you're losing games to the Yankees, teams in the AL, right? Okay, that's fine. That's one thing. But when you start losing games to division opponents, that's where you can see that number start to trickle down to 4, 5, 3 games maybe. Who knows where the Phillies are at. But you play Atlanta twice this month. Those are going to be big-time series. They're more important than playing the Yankees in July and getting swept. You move on. Get out of this rut soon. But those series against the Braves, they're going to be gigantic here in the month of August.
Yep. I think the Phillies will be A-okay. By the way, MLB.com power rankings, Phillies number 1.
Yep. That sounds about right. They're still the best team in baseball. Still even through this run. All right. Nugget number 2. I was scrolling through social media, and we're staying with the Phillies here a little bit. This kind of goes back to the trade deadline as well. Gregory Soto gets moved to the Baltimore Orioles. We saw Dave Dombrowski talk about him, and he didn't really like his role. And now it comes out, Danielle Allen-Tuck, a Baltimore reporter for the Baltimore Banner, reported Gregory Soto said he and his agent told the Phillies that if the opportunity came up to go to another team, he would want to. He was looking for a new environment, that he's happy he's getting that chance with the Orioles. So clearly, it makes us, we were talking about it yesterday. It shows that, he wanted to be a closer. He didn't like the role and how he was used here in Philadelphia. He struggled. He definitely struggled in his 2 years after that trade that the Phillies did make a couple of years back to get Soto from Detroit. But, he wanted out, essentially. I mean, good thing he kept it quiet. Well, it didn't really get out to the media, but clearly he was frustrated, wanted out, wants to be a closer, and wants a new opportunity. And I guess he gets it in Baltimore.
Yeah, but is he going to close in Baltimore? No.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think so.
Think about this. If you played the Orioles in the World Series, you could potentially see Dominguez in the 7th, Soto in the 8th, and Kimbrel in the 9th. Think about that. Seriously. Now, they DFA'd Christian Pache today. Maybe a Phillies reunion there. But really, their bullpen right now is the Phillies bullpen from last year, but the scraps of the Phillies bullpen. I mean, Kimbrel obviously wasn't a scrap, but he stunk in his role. They have him closing. Now, there's a lot of buzz about them wanting to get him out of the closer's role, so maybe they got Soto to try to give him the chance to be the closer down there. Who knows? But, man, if Baltimore is depending on those 3 guys, it's going to be hard to see them get through 2 or 3 rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, another reason, if you're the Phillies, you want to see Baltimore in the World Series if you can get there, right? I mean, that'd be a great matchup. You see Baltimore, you get all those guys. You played with them for a couple years, and they struggled mightily while they were Phillies.
Hey, listen, I would love to see a Phillies-Baltimore series for, obviously the proximity, trying to go down there to watch a game. I love Baltimore. That's an awesome team. That lineup I want no part of in a World Series situation. Now, their pitching is not great. They don't have great bullpen, and they don't have great starting pitching. It's good, it's not great, and their bullpen is obviously a problem for them as they tried to add at the deadline, and they're knocking on the Phillies' door for bullpen help.
Yeah, and their starting pitching, it seems like almost all their starters have gotten hurt this year. I mean, like all their starting pitching went down on the IL. They've had trouble in the back end of the bullpen, but they have a really good young lineup. That offense is scary. They also just sent down, I believe it was Heston Kjerstad. I don't know if they sent him down. I believe that's who I saw got sent down today. So, but that's a really good team. The proximity would be great. Now, if you had a choice, are you going to CBP for a World Series game, or would you go on the road to an Orioles game?
I haven't been to Camden Yards in some time, but I have to imagine the tickets down there are a little cheaper. Okay. So I would say I would like to go to Camden Yards to check out a World Series game if the Phillies were in there. I might do that. We might even take the show on the road down there, maybe do it at like Pickles Pub or something over there. Got to find, I don't know, Pickles Pub is a little too Baltimore. That's where the Orioles go.
Baltimore-centric,
yeah, well, that's where the Orioles fans go before the game. But maybe I can go over to like the horse you rode in on or Max's Tap House, a little place that is a little more touristy.
Yeah, because I went for the first time, went to Camden Yards this year when the Phillies played them. I actually went to the game they won. The only game they won in that series. It was that Friday night game that got delayed. It went to extras. It was a crazy one. But I think I'm with you. I think I'd go to Baltimore because I'm going to be going to the playoff game. If the Phillies and Orioles played in the World Series, I think I'm going. If I would do everything I could to go to Camden Yards for that game.
I'll be there with you. We'll do a show down there. We'll do a show down there.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. If the Orioles and Phillies are in the World Series, 15 years of the Sports Bash, we're going to Baltimore. That'll happen in October.
I'm in.
All right, let's do it. All right. Final nugget of the day. Now there's another event going on right now, Mike, and it's the Olympics. Now I want to get your thoughts. Now there's a lot of different sports, a lot of sports I haven't even heard of. And this past weekend, before I went in to deal with the Schweiner on Sunday, because I was on Sunday this week, I was watching an obscure one. All right. I never even heard of it. I've heard of equestrian. Now, have you heard of cross country equestrian? This was what I was locked into at 7 a.m. before I went into the locker room to produce Billy's show. I was locked into this. It was fascinating. Had no idea what was going on. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm locked into, Mike, at 7 a.m. in the morning before the Schweiner.
We were talking about this a little earlier, but we did not bring up cross-country equestrian. No, I did not see that one. But, yeah, like the 3-on-3. I mean, come on. 3-on-3 is not an Olympic sport.
Whoa, you don't like the 3-on-3?
That's not an Olympic sport. That's for Ice Cube.
It's an Olympic sport.
Come on.
It's an Olympic sport. That's my one goal in life because I love playing like 3-on-3 pickup basketball. Big pickup basketball guy over here, Mike. If I can get to the Olympics in somehow, some way, and be a 3-on-3 basketball player, I know Jimmer Fredette's over there playing 3-on-3
that's
games.
What that is. Jimmer Fredette's not an Olympian, for God's sakes. Neither is Rick Barry's son, who's on the team.
It's Olympic pickup basketball, Mike. I mean, there's nothing better than that. Anyone could get in. You could be a great pickup basketball player, not playing the NBA. I mean, you could be a YouTuber essentially and get in there.
Why aren't they using NBA players?
Because they're playing on the U.S. team and all the other countries around in the 5-on-5 normal basketball.
Well, there's enough guys who got snubbed from the regular team that I think you could grab. You could have grabbed Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, and two other guys. I think they probably would have won gold.
Yeah, that might be a little bit of a snub, though. It might be a little bit of a snub. Say, hey, you can't make the real team. You're going to go play on the 3-on-3 team. Remember, you know what they should do? I don't think they have this, but they should have double rims for 3-on-3 basketball. That's what they should do. They should play it outside and have double rims. Now that's an Olympic sport. What about the
chain? What about the chain net?
Yeah, chain net. I think it should be pickup basketball. That's how the 3-on-3 should be looked at. It should be outside, double rims, chain nets. That's how it should be done. That is 3-on-3 to me, not indoor stuff. No.
With the N1 mixtape playing in the background.
Exactly. That would be fantastic. I'm all for that for the 3-on-3. Let's adjust it. Let's make it more fun.
I have not seen the 3-on-3. I watched a little water polo last night. The French team scored as time expired to send it to, I don't know. I didn't even see what happened here. I just happened to be flipping and I turned it on and the guy scored literally at the 60-minute mark. And I'm guessing that's the end of the half or the game. So I don't even know what happened, but that looked exciting. What else? I've been watching a little bit of the swimming. I don't know, like the gymnastics has been on a lot, but I haven't seen like some of those like secondary sports of the Olympics.
No equestrian for you then.
No equestrian. Like, so in the Winter Olympics, everybody gets into the curling. What's the sport that like is kind of off the radar? That's not one of the track and field. Well, I know track and field hasn't started yet, but like swimming and gymnastics are like the big ones. The secondary sports like curling. What's that in the Summer Olympics?
Oh, I mean, you kind of just mentioned it, water polo. Water polo is fantastic. I love watching the water polo. It's handball in the water. Like they have handball, but water polo is, I think, even better than handball. So I would go water polo is the best secondary sport. If you're not, you go the main track and field, basketball, the secondary. Oh, it's got to be water polo. No doubt in my mind. I missed that match last night. I'm pretty mad about it now.
All right. Well, I'll have to dive in a little deeper on a game then. I only got like the last minute. I was like, what is going on here? And I checked that out. All right. Water polo. I'll put that on the list.
All right, sounds good. Mike, I'm heading to the Eagles practice tonight. You know, I never stop. I'm always in the sports.
Wow.
Heading to the Eagles practice
What's
tonight.
that run you?
Like $10.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it was only $10. Now, they used to be free. I thought it used to be free. Now they upped it to $10 for GA.
Yeah, but $10, I think, that's something. I'm a fan of just being in the building. Like, right. I'll go to any game. I don't care the magnitude of it. Like, to me, going in the building, walking around the concourse, just hearing the sounds, the smells, the food, that's me. $10. Like, I love going to like a Temple game just because I'm in the building.
Is it funny? I grew up going to Temple games. I went to the Link as a youngster, going to all those Temple games when they were really bad.
I went to the Vet and watched Temple.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that? Look at that, Mike.
Temple football.
We're living identical lives here.
At the Vet was something to be seen. All right, Knicks Nuggets tomorrow. We are live at Charlie's in Summers Point, and we're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash with Bud Lights are $2 during the entire show tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll have Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day tickets and all sorts of prizes throughout the day. So come out, say hello. 15 years of the Sports Bash. It's Happy Hour Friday at Charlie's, 800 Shore Road in Summers Point, and a live edition of Knicks Nuggets on the Sports Bash tomorrow. You watching the Hall of Fame game tonight?
Well, I'll be at the practice, so maybe I'll catch
What
maybe
time's
on my
the practice?
phone.
What time's the practice?
6:30 it starts. So
yeah,
I'm jetting there.
Hall of Fame games at 8 o'clock.
Okay, I'll probably make it back then.
If you were home, would you be watching it? Are you that into
I
the
will
football?
be tuning in. Yeah, Phillies are off.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow, man.
All right, Mike. See you tomorrow.
All right, there you go. Knicks Nuggets in the books here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Coming up, we'll dive into the Phillies, see if they did enough at the deadline. They got a little day off here. We'll examine that coming up on the other side. And we got the big three for today. That's all in the 5 o'clock hour. Somebody texted in earlier. We were talking about fencing. Where's the closest fencing spot? Somebody said, looks like the closest fencing is in Cherry Hill. So if you want to get into fencing, there you go. Cherry Hill would be the place to go. Any place else that you can learn how to fence, teach fencing, let us know. 609-403-0973. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, 5 o'clock hour, brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. Great car buying experience. Go see my guy Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Tilton Road EHT, your small but friendly dealer. Online, KeyAcuraAtlanticCity.com. Tomorrow we're live at Charlie's at Summers Point. Stop out and see us tomorrow. Sports Bash celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And we'll be out at Charlie's hanging out, $2 Bud Lights. We invite everybody in the audience to stop by, just say hello, have a brewski, say hello, enter to win tickets. And then don't forget, we're doing 10 qualifiers for 99 bottles. So if you want to be in this year's 99 bottles party, which will be in November, and you don't want to have to call in to enter and be one of the 99, show up tomorrow to Charlie's and we'll enter 10 people tomorrow, just like we did last week at Giuliano's in Egg Harbor Township. That was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people say, hey, they stopped by, they entered for the 99 bottles, we pulled the 10 names. Those 10 people, you're in for this year's 99 bottles party. So we're really down to 89 people left. So this week we'll be down to 79, but you got to stop out, which means once we start the phones for 99 bottles, you're going to be limited. So you're going to want to get out to one of these events, and tomorrow's your next chance at Charlie's in Summers Point. Come on up to us, say, hey, I want to be in this year's 99 bottles. I don't know who's with me tomorrow. Nick is obviously there. I think Madison and Giuliano were with me last week. Those two will be out there hanging out. I know it was a lot of fun last week. We were hanging out And then afterwards, we hung out and watched the Phillies game last week. Now, tomorrow night, what time do the Phillies play tomorrow night? They're out on the West Coast. What's that?
I think it's 9 or 9:30.
I was going to say it's the West Coast. 9:40 is the start time tomorrow. So right after the show is over tomorrow, we won't have the Phillies like we did last week. That was a lot of fun. And we don't have the Eagles. If this was next week, we'd have the Eagles.
That's true. Next week.
Eagles football is on next week right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mike Gill on the Sports Bash Live. Phillies, did they address the issues on offense? You know, the last couple of years, we were talking about this earlier. On offense, they struggled in the Diamondback series. They got no hit. They struggled in the Astro World Series. The offense has let them down. Have they done enough to address the problems that failed them in past series by adding Austin Hayes? Is that enough? Did they do enough to do something different offensively? Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Did the Phillies do enough? Did they address their offensive issues simply by adding Austin Hayes?
Yeah, so if you're asking about the offense, look, I mean, I think that it was a marginal upgrade, which is sort of what we thought it would be. You know, we thought they'd go and get a right-handed hitting outfielder to play either part of the time in left field, or Austin Hayes is getting a chance right now to play most of the time to see if he can be the everyday guy in left, in which case Brandon Marsh moves to center and plays at least against righties. He got a start against a lefty the other night, which surprised me. But I think that was the kind of move that we thought they were going to make, whether it was, you know, Austin Hayes was not somebody who was, I'll be honest with you, on my radar, because at the trade deadline, you tend to look at sellers. You don't tend to think of two contenders making a trade like that. And it's unusual. It's creative on both sides. But you don't really think of those guys. You think of the guys who are on bad teams who are going to move. And, you know, we thought about Lane Thomas. We thought about, Mark Canha, guys like that, who both of them ended up going to other teams. But that was sort of the move, and that's the move they made. So they get Hayes, and they'll roll with what they have. And you know, like you said, I mean, look, I think the combination of the fact that this high-powered offense went cold simultaneously last year after Game 2 of the NLCS, along with the fact that we just saw the Eagles, right, go from 10-1 to barely making the playoffs and getting bounced right away. You know, I think it's probably natural to kind of look at the Phillies and say, what's going on here? How does this team that was a world beater for 2.5 months have a second half of July like they had, where they lose 11 out of 15 or whatever it's been? I would tell you to look at the Yankees, who we just saw here. The Yankees were, I believe, 50-22 at their high water mark, and had a really bad stretch the last half of June and early July, fell out of first place, seemed to have found their stride again. But, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is really good teams go through tough times, and I think that's what they're going through right now. I'm not saying just hand wave it away and say, like, it'll be fine. There are obviously issues they have to work through, but the reason why most teams don't wind up winning 113 games or whatever the pace the Phillies were on there for a while is because most good teams go through it at some point during the year. And so you end up in the 90s, or you end up even in the low hundreds. It's rare to see the team that goes, 113 wins, 115 wins. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing right now, is a little bit of a regression. But they believe they're good enough to pull out of it, and their track record in the last calendar year is that they're a really good team. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, obviously, Scott, they bring in Hayes. They're playing him every day, but they added him, and he's basically hitting in the 9 hole, which is an upgrade over, I guess, hitting Pache or Rojas in the 9 hole. My question for you, though, is What do you think about what they're doing with the rest of the lineup? I mean, is Marsh a guy that is dependable enough that can hit in the 5-hole? Does he offer enough, that 3, 4, 5? Last year was Stott. He's really struggled, although he's come around lately. Castellanos, we know he's so streaky. What do you think about, is that fluid, that 5, 6, 7, I mean, that part of the order? Do you see that being fluid, or do they like Marsh this year? I mean, you remember, this is a guy that's been hitting in the 8 and 9 hole for you for the most part the last couple runs.
Yeah, so I think, and the numbers bear this out, I think they think Marsh is a different hitter against righties than he is for sure. So against righties, I don't think they mind having him in the 5-hole or the 6-hole. Against lefties, either he's not in the lineup or he's going to be much further down. I think, look, Nick Castellanos looks pretty good in the 7-hole, better than he does a lot of the time in the 5-hole. So, if there's a way to kind of push him down in the order, I think they'll look to do it. JT Realmuto is still kind of getting his timing back after missing 5 weeks. He had a better weekend, or a better series, I should say, against the Yankees than he did the previous series against Minnesota and against Cleveland. So maybe he's coming around a little bit. But, I think while he struggles, and to kind of get, to kind of mitigate some of that, I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen Marsh against righties hit a little higher in the lineup than he has in the past.
Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer talk a little Phils as they're kind of struggling along, heading out west. Really tough series now coming up with Seattle and the Dodgers and Arizona. I want to ask you a little bit about what the West has done. San Diego went out and got Scott, a lefty. A.J. Puck is now in Arizona, a lefty. They also got Josh Bell, who seemingly hits a home run every time he's up the bat against you. Those teams, did they make the necessary moves to close the gap and say, hey, Philly, we're coming for you?
I thought, the way I looked at the deadline heading into it was a little bit like what you just said, like less about the Phillies per se than about some of these other National League contenders closing the gap with the Phillies. I don't think that the Padres went out and got a couple of lefty relievers to beat the Phillies per se. I don't think it hurts them if they were thinking along those lines. That's a team that's still got to get in, right? And they're in a very tight wild card race with, it's basically 5 or 6 teams for 3 spots. They're going to jockey for position here over the next 2 months. It's the Braves, the Padres, the Mets, the Cardinals. Who am I leaving out? Somebody else, the Diamondbacks. I mean, there are
Pittsburgh's hanging in there with that pitching. They're 2.5 out.
Pirates as well, and they should scare you with that pitching. So, I wouldn't say that the Padres were so forward thinking that they just, hey, let's load up on lefties because we know we're going to face the Phillies. They've got to get there first. I do think, that some of the Phillies' priority of going out and trying to find a right-handed hitting outfielder was in part to help them should they see, like, the Braves, for instance, in a short series, and you get, Chris Sale who's left-handed, and you get Max Fried who's left-handed, and 2 of the 3 starters you might see in this 5-game series are going to be left-handed if it's the Braves. The Mets have Minaya and Quintana. Minaya in particular has pitched well. So I do think the Phillies were looking to maybe kind of get stronger against lefties because they know they'll face some in the playoffs. But, while I think teams were trying to to close that gap on the Phillies, I think it's probably, we may be giving them a little too much credit to think that they were targeting a lefty per se over a righty. I think the Padres were just looking to make their bullpen better, and they did. They got Jason Adam. They got the guys you mentioned. I think that's a much better bullpen now, and that's clearly how they're going to try to win games.
They made their bullpen better. The Phillies traded 2 arms out, brought 1 in. How do you see, Scott, how the Phillies bullpen is both different and better now?
Well, Estevez was kind of the main target because I think they wanted a guy that they could put at the back of the game. Like Rob Thompson is essentially named him the closer without using the word closer. He doesn't like to use the word. He likes to be flexible back there. He likes to go by matchups. He likes to have multiple guys available who could close a game. All of those things are important. But he did say Estevez is going to get majority of the ninth innings. And what that does is it slides everybody else up a notch. So in the playoffs, in particular, when Rob Thompson likes to be more aggressive in how he uses his bullpen, he can bring in Alvarado in the sixth inning. He could bring in Strom earlier in a game, knowing that he has Estevez back there to handle the ninth. He could use Hoffman in the seventh, that sort of thing. And so I think it's important for them to have whether they say he's the closer or not, it's important for them to have that guy back there who's kind of like the rock at the back of the bullpen. I don't know that they were necessarily looking to trade Sir Anthony Dominguez. It was what it took to get Austin Hayes. Like I said, they made a trade with another contender, and the Orioles were saying, well, if we're going to give up Austin Hayes, who's not really playing for us, we need bullpen help. And so the Phillies said, well, we have some depth in our bullpen. We really need that outfielder. So they matched up. Now, what's ironic about the whole thing is that Gregory Soto ends up getting traded to the Orioles, too. And in that case, I think the Phillies looked at it and said, well, Soto is no better than the sixth option in their bullpen after getting Estevez, right? You have Estevez, Alvarado, Strom, Hoffman, Kerkering, who are all kind of ahead of Soto in the pecking order. Soto has never really embraced not pitching in high-leverage spots. He was a two-time All-Star closer in Detroit, was not a closer here. He never really sort of took to that role earlier in the game. So they said, well, if we're talking about the sixth option in our bullpen, let's take Soto, who really doesn't fit, and move him and bring in someone in Tanner Banks who fits the profile more as a number six option. He's really good against lefties. You can sort of see a path where, it's earlier in a game. They need to get a couple of lefties out. Thompson feels like, okay, Tanner Banks is my guy. And maybe he fits better into that spot in the bullpen. So I think that's kind of what they saw. They were able to get Banks. Then they were able to offload Soto for a couple of arms who don't necessarily replace the arms they gave up for Estevez, but they will help replenish the system a little bit. And away they go. So I think that's I think they looked for need in the bullpen. They got very specific about what they were looking for, and that was the reason they made those moves.
Scott, obviously the team's been struggling, and it's the high-end guys. You're around this team a lot. Are you seeing a team that's searching for answers, or just kind of like, hey, it's August and a long season?
Yeah, I mean, I think when this started, and we can talk about when, because it's been going on for a little while. It was, they came back from London, no JT Realmuto, played a couple of tough American League teams on the road with the Red Sox and the Orioles, lost both series, chalked it up. Okay, whatever. Not full strength, didn't play so great, played two good teams, both on the road. Okay, fine. You can sort of reason that away. Then they come home, Harper gets hurt, Schwarber get hurt on the same day. You got to just sort of plow through that 10-day stretch without those guys. For the most part, that's what they did. Those guys come back, you sweep the Dodgers. And you're like, all right, back in business, right? Bad series before the break against the A's can kind of chalk that up. Come back from the break. Now they've played a good schedule, good teams, some road games, but, I think as this homestand went along, it got a little bit less easier to just sort of dismiss it away and say, okay, because now they're healthy again. They're back home where they play well usually. What happened this past week, right? And I think maybe by the time they left yesterday, there was some of that going on. What is going on here? This isn't who we are. Why are we struggling? This is uncharacteristic of us. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. And I think today is a good day for them to kind of get away from the ballpark, not think about things, come back tomorrow away from home, about as far away as they can be, playing late at night on the East Coast, just sort of take a deep breath, go back to being who you are, and try to get back on the beam here. And it's not like it's going to be easy because, as you said, the Mariners are a good team on the road in Seattle. Then they go to the Dodgers, good team on the road. And Arizona, it's a good team. We know that on the road in Arizona where the Phillies don't tend to play well usually. So it's not like this is going to be an easy trip, but I do think maybe it's a chance for them to kind of catch their breath, clear their heads, and realize, all right, we're good. this is just so it is a bad stretch, but I do think that they have to begin to ask why have they not played well now for a little while, and what do they have to do to turn it around?
We're talking with Scott Lauber from the Philadelphia Inquirer. A couple more minutes with him as we take a look at some of the things going on. I know Walker threw last night. What do you see with the back end of that rotation and how that will factor into some things here? You got Phillips pitching well. I don't know that anybody had Mercado and Kobe Allard. I even was at a game where I saw Kirkering start a game. I don't know that was ever on the bingo card this year. So what are they looking at that back end of the rotation for the next couple weeks?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of mix and match, So they, from what I understand, it was not great last night with Taijuan Walker. Velocity was in like 90 to 92. I heard the splitter got a bit. Those are two things that you're looking for with him as he comes back. How's this? Because I don't believe he can pitch without the splitter. So, I think that's one thing. He's going to pitch again next week in AAA. I suspect that if he pitches well, they might bring him back. But based on last night, it sounds like it's going to take more than just one more for him to be ready. But he factors into the mix as a guy who, is a veteran pitcher who can eat some innings, who can go into a rotation for you in the second half of August and the first half of September when you'd like to go to a six-man rotation if possible and kind of eat some innings and win some games. He won a lot of games last year for them. So, and I know we don't look at pitcher wins anymore, but, he was a guy who was on the mound for a lot of wins. So, and he pitched well in the middle of the year. If they could get, 3 or 4 or 5 good starts from him, in a six-man rotation, they'll take that. They still expect Ranger Suarez to not be too long on the injured list. I think it's possible, depending on how the next few days go, that maybe he comes off when he's eligible, and that would be, I believe, during the Diamondback series. So, that would be a big boost if they can get him back. Until then, Colby Allard remains in the rotation. Tyler Phillips has been kind of like the stopper, right? He's the guy who's pitching great and all of that. He starts tomorrow night in Seattle. They're going to look for another good start from him. And then I think he'll face the Dodgers in the last game there. So, he's going to get a few more starts for sure. But really, it's just kind of piecing it together until you get Suarez back. At some point, you'll get Walker for whatever it's worth. Spencer Turnbull is still a ways away, and when he comes back, I don't know if there's going to be time to stretch him out to be a starter. So, he might factor in as a multi-inning reliever. But they'll piece it together until they are back to full strength. And at some point, like I said, they'd like to get to a six-man rotation. Because I think really the key from now until the end of the season is to keep your pitchers healthy. The Phillies did very well the last 2 years to keep their starting pitching healthy and lined up in the playoffs, and it's why they made deep runs the last 2 years. That'll be paramount for them to do again. All right,
there you got to run real quick. Pache got DFA today. They're not going to bring him back, right?
Yeah, I saw he got DFA'd. I don't know. I wouldn't think so, but, their 40-man roster's full now. Not to say they can't make him, move here or there to clear a spot, but it bears watching.
Yeah, but, I know they like him.
Yeah, I did see that the Orioles let him go, so we will see.
All right, bud. Scott Lauber, everybody. Thanks, man.
All right, sounds good.
All right,
Mike.
There's Scott, and, of course, you can check him out at Inquirer.com, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Phillies beat writer, 5:20 on a Thursday. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour brought to you by Kia Acura of Atlantic City. Great car buying experience. Go see Rocco at Kia Acura. Tilton Road, EH8, your small but friendly dealer. Online, Kia Acura of Atlantic City.com. So, he brought up an interesting point about the bullpen earlier, in that conversation. You take a look at what they gave up. They sent out, he was talking about the Soto stuff, that Soto wanted to close. The Phillies think they have a closer. Are they going to use him as their closer? We're going to find out during this tough stretch of games. They play the Mariners tomorrow night, the Dodgers, and then the Diamondbacks. So we'll be all over that. Big three on the way. Stick around. More Sports Bash coming up on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And don't forget, tonight it's the Hall of Fame game. Football is back, and it's only on 97.3 ESPN.
we have the perfect sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
528 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Big three time. We are almost done our division previews. We did the NFC North today with Andrew DeCecco for football at 4. Next week, we'll dive into the NFC East, and that will get us ready for the preseason. And we'll start to talk Eagles much more with the Football at 4 crew on the Sports Bash. But today is another edition of the Big Three.
Yeah, speaking of the division previews, Mike, instead of Big Three, we got 4. So there are 4 divisions in each conference. You've already gone through the entire AFC with Andrew DeCecco each and every week here on the Sports Bash. So we are going to review the teams in the 4 AFC divisions. We are going to hear from you, Mike, who you would pick to win the division. I have all the odds in front of us here. And then you can tell me which of the teams you think over or under on the wins, and we'll see if we agree or disagree. What do you think?
I'm ready to play. I feel like I'm on a game show here.
All right, let's start with the AFC West. Let's go from west to east here. So, the Denver Broncos, who are currently at plus 1,800 to win the division, they are at 5.5 wins. Are you going over or under?
5.5 for Denver. I'm going to take the under on that. I think Denver's probably the worst team in the league. The quarterback situation there. Yeah. Wow. I think that they are, maybe New England could be worse than Denver. Yeah, don't love the quarterback situation in Denver. Bo Nix, Zach Wilson, Jarrett Stidham. I'll take the under on that.
I am also taking the under because I think they'll win 5 games. So I don't think they're going to be horrible, but I think that they are just a mess right now. They are a year away from being a year away at this point to me.
If that's even accurate. They might be further than that. If the quarterback can play, we'll see.
Yeah. Chargers plus 320 to win their division. They are over under 8.5, Mike.
Chargers 8.5. I will go. Something happened to Herbert today, didn't it?
So he has right plantar fasciitis. He's going to be in a boot for 2 weeks.
All right. So he's 2 weeks out. Nothing bigger than that. They did lose a lot. They lost Allen and Williams, so they're really starting over at the receiver position.
They also lost Eckler.
And Eckler. Their whole offensive skill sets are different. Colson they brought in for the draft. Obviously Harbaugh 8.5. Man, that's a tough one. I'm going to go over for them. I
am also going over. I think Harbaugh is going to get them to 9 wins this year. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, but they'll get to 9 wins. I feel like. Las Vegas Raiders, your boy Q's team. Plus 900 to win the division, 6.5 wins. Over or under?
Don't like the Raiders all that much. Defense is better. They've got, Crosby to kind of lead that defense. They got a defensive-minded coach now.
They signed Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins.
They're better there. They got Brock Bowers to give, Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. That's the problem. So give their offense a little bit more of a weapon. Devontae Adams, they just don't have great quarterback play. What's the number on them? 6.5? Man, I don't like the quarterback situation there. If Minshew plays, I think they can get over that because they do have a couple of players, Bowers and Adams, and their defense is decent. Man, they got a brutal stretch to start. They play Baltimore. They got Cleveland. Some Carolina and Denver. They do play Kansas. They play the Rams, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Miami, back to back to back. 6.5. I'm going to take the over. I got 7 and 10 for them.
I also have over for them because I think that people don't realize that these players wanted Antonio Pierce. So now they're going to keep playing for the coach. Whereas remember when they got rid of Rich Bisaccia, they weren't happy about that. So keep that in mind. Finally, the Chiefs plus 180 to win the division, over under 11.5 wins.
Chiefs are tough. I think they are coming back to the pack a little bit, although they did add some stuff in the draft. They got the receiver there that could help them out.
Xavier Worthy.
Let me go Chiefs 11. I'm going to take the over. I mean, they can win 12 games again.
I agree. And I think also you got to remember that they are probably, as you said, if they're a better offense than they were last year, they're going to win a lot of games more handily. And the defense is still pretty darn good. So I believe you're picking the Chiefs to win the division, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to go Chiefs to win the division. And like, I feel like there's not even really a challenger. I struggled to say over for almost every one of those teams.
Mike, let's go to the AFC South. Let's start with Gardner Minshew's former team, the Indianapolis Colts. They are plus 310 to win the division. 8.5 wins. You going over or under?
Colts 8.5 wins. Let me see. Well, Richardson's back. I don't know if that excites me all that much. Division is, rather manageable. And trying to see which divisions they play against. That's the pause again. They got the NFC North. That's not easy. Man, I'm going to go Indiana. What was it, 8.5?
8.5.
I'm going to go Indianapolis with I'm going to go under.
I am also going under because I feel like they did not do enough to upgrade the team this offseason. I have some concerns about their depth, and we saw that they were a play away from the playoffs last year, so they won't surprise anybody this year.
Yeah, and I just don't know that Richardson's all that big of an upgrade. I mean, yeah, he's more dynamic and stuff, but I think he's going to, leave plays on the field. Don't love the receiving situation out there. Taylor, is he going to be healthy? So,
big if.
Yeah.
A lot of ifs going on there. Another team that also 8.5 wins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Mike. Plus 275 to win the division. You going over or under the 8.5 for the Jags?
Jacksonville's a team that I like. They disappointed last year. They signed Lawrence to the big deal. Obviously, you've got Peterson trying to, I think if Peterson doesn't do well here, they could be on the hot seat if they don't make the playoffs again. Tough stretch to start, though. Dolphins, Browns, Bills, Texans. I mean, they could be 0-4 out of the gates there. And then you got to stretch a little bit later on in the season with the Lions and the Texans. But I do like this team. What's the number on Jacksonville? 8.5. Can they get to 9? I'm going to go 9-8 for the Texans.
I'm going over as well because I think that Doug Peterson will get this turned around. He has made changes to his coaching staff this offseason. Remember, Doug was hesitant to make changes to his coaching staff in Philadelphia. I think he's learned from that mistake. He is now making changes in Jacksonville. I think it'll help the team, and I think they will go over. Mike, let's go to the Tennessee Titans. They are plus 1,000 to win the division. 6.5 wins. Over or under for the revamped Titans?
They won 6 games last year. I like the over for Tennessee. I think they're being overlooked here. I don't love the quarterback situation, but Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, Pollard, I think they got some weapons on offense that can help Will Levis out. Their defense isn't terrible. New coach down there, but 6 was the number they hit last year. With that group of skill players, I think they go over. They can get out of the gates interesting. They got the Bears, Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts, Bills. That's their first month or two of the season there. I think the over is the number for Tennessee.
If anybody's been listening to 97.3 ESPN, I am big on the Titans to be better this year. Over. I'm like, what's that guy from Mad Money, Jim Cramer?
Yep.
Buy. I'm buying the Titans, man. Finally, the team that won the division last year, the Houston Texans, Mike. They are plus 105 win division. Their over-under on wins is 9.5. Over or under?
Texans, 9.5. I got to pound the over on that one.
That's what I'm saying.
I know it sounds like they won 10 games last year. They go out and get
Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon to play running back. They added Danielle Hunter to play on the defensive side. This team got better in almost every position.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 games that I think they definitively win, and then they just have to figure out a way to win 2 more out of that. I'm okay with that. I'll go Texans over.
Are you picking Texans to win the division?
Yeah, I am. I like C.J. Stroud. I think he's the reason why. Plus, they added plenty of help for him. I think he takes a big step forward again. I like Houston to win that division.
All right, let's go to the most difficult division in potentially all of football, the AFC North, Mike. So let's get to some of these guys here. Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Gill's boy Joe Burrow is back from injury. Plus 140 to win the division.
Now, remember, everybody has to stay healthy for these things to matter.
That is true. 10.5 over or under for the Bengals.
All right, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got at least 9 for them. And if they can get one other one that I'm like not saying is a give me, I'll go 11 for the Bengals.
So you're going to go over.
Yep.
So I'm going under because I do think they're going to have a tough stretch here. I think they'll make the postseason, but it'll be at 10-7. I don't think they'll get over the 10.5 personally. So how about the Cleveland Browns, Mike? They're plus 600 to win the division. 8.5 wins. Over or under?
Which one was this?
Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland, okay. I'm looking at the paper here, and I see Steelers 8.5, and so I didn't know if that was the one. All right, Cleveland Browns 8.5, very good defense. Don't like Watson. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 games that I think they can definitively win. That means they got to try to find a way to win 4 more. They won 11 last year with sketchy quarterback play.
And they had 12 starters injured.
Yeah, that clouds us up. Can they get to 9? Yeah, I'm going to go Cleveland 9. I'll get them up to 9.
All right, welcome to the dark side. You and me both agree on that one. Baltimore Ravens plus 145, 10.5 wins, just like the Bengals. You going over or under for Baltimore?
Baltimore won 13 games last year, by the way. So you got, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. I got definitively 8 for them. Can they get 3 more? Tough one there. I'm going to go under.
So I'm going to go over.
I've got 10 wins. I'm going to go 10 for Baltimore.
Okay, I'm going 11 for Baltimore personally. I think that people don't realize that Derrick Henry's going to take a lot of pressure off of Lamar Jackson this year, in my opinion. So, but you have under for the Ravens.
Yep.
Finally, the Steelers, 8.5 wins over under. They are plus 800 to win the division.
They won 10 games last year. Much better quarterback situation. This year I got, let's see, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, man, they got a tough schedule. I got 5 definitive wins for them. They need to get up to 9. I'm going to have to pull back on the Pittsburgh one a little bit. I think they can get to 9, but somebody's got to be the dog in this division. So I know Pittsburgh's got a better quarterback situation, but I think Cincinnati rising back up pushes Pittsburgh down a little bit, so I'll go under for Pittsburgh.
You and I both agree on this. I have the under as well because my concern about Pittsburgh is not them, as you said. It's the rest of the division. It's the fact that you are in such a tough division. And if we're going by the whole premise of everyone is healthy, I think the Steelers have the lesser roster. Finally, Mike, you got to pick who you think will win the AFC.
Yeah, I'm going Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's back with Burrow getting hopefully healthy. Now, they did lose Boyd, so the receiving options there not as good. So, but I think Jamar Chase has bigger. No Mixon this year either, but I'm going to go Cincinnati to win the division.
So this is where we differ. I am picking the Browns to win the division.
Grief.
I think that they went to postseason without half their team basically last year. I think that if everything is healthy and everybody's equal, I think that Browns defense is going to wreck people this year. I've already told my guy Andy McNamara, who's a Browns fan, I was like, dude, you realize that when the Eagles and Browns are going to play this year, it's going to be take the under. It's going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I mean, I like their defense a lot. Myles Garrett up for Defensive Player of the Year again, so obviously we'll keep an eye on that. But I'm going to go Cincinnati.
All right, so we finally have the AFC East. Mike, Buffalo Bills plus 180 to win the division this year. 10.5 wins. Over or under?
Buffalo, I think, takes a step back. I thought last year that they were a team that would take a step back. They almost did. They ended up winning those last 4 and made them playoffs. Cardinals. Buffalo, 10.5. Let's see. 1, 2. Well, I got a tough schedule.
You're already struggling to get on this
3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 definitive wins. What's their number? I got under for the Bills. I just don't. I didn't like what they did this offseason. I think you're leaning way too much on Allen and younger players.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't understand how anybody thinks this team is going to be a double-digit win team easily. I mean, to me, they're going to struggle to get to 10 wins if they get there at all. So, Miami Dolphins plus 200 win division, over under 9.5.
Miami lost a lot on defense. Christian Wilkins.
Van Ginkel.
Van Ginkel's gone. The corner is out of there as well. Obviously, everybody's back on the offensive side of the ball, so this is going to have to be a team that carries them there. Let's see.
Can the offense carry them?
Their offense is very good. I mean, yeah, their offense can, but it's hard because, it's like the Phillies in baseball. Like, if they have a couple weeks where they're just not rocking, their defense I don't think is great. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got like 5 or 6 definitive, like, winnable games. I'm going to take for the Dolphins 9.5. Man, they got to win 10 games. They won 11 last year.
But you said it. They had a better defense last year.
I'm going to take the over. I think they get to 10. So they got a tough schedule, though.
They do have a tough schedule. That's why I'm taking the under. I think the Dolphins are a team that's going to struggle this year. I think they're going to score a ton of points, but their defense is going to allow just as many. And I think that they're going to have to fire that defensive coordinator down there after 1 year. I think it's going to get that bad.
Wow.
I think that defense is going to get run over. Speaking of a team with a good defense, the New York Jets' problem last year, Mike, was their quarterback. Wasn't their defense. Plus 180 to win the division. 9.5 wins. I'm assuming you might go over on this one.
Yeah, I like the Jets. I definitely like the Jets. It's all, if Rodgers stays healthy. He is 41 years old, so I don't think it's a gimme that he does stay healthy, but they are loaded all over the place. I really like their defense a lot. And a big Garrett Wilson fan. Hall's very good. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 games that I feel pretty good for them. It is 9.5. They'll get to 10. Give me over for the Jets.
Finally, the New England Patriots, who you mentioned earlier, may be the worst team in football, plus 2,500 to win the division. Their over-under, Mike, is the lowest in the AFC at 4.5.
Yeah, they got a tough division. So that's 6 games there that they've probably throw up a donut in.
Yeah.
After that, let's see.
You're already in the hole.
1. I got 1 game on their schedule that I think they have maybe 2.
Do they play the Panthers? Is that what it is?
No, I'm saying the way I'm looking at it is games that I think they have a shot to win,
gotcha.
Like where it's like a coin flip, maybe. And I say that coin, it's Seattle, and I think Seattle's better than them, but it's at home.
Right.
So that's a game I think they can possibly win. The other one would be the Colts at home. Even the Cardinals on the road would be a tough. I go under. I think if they win 4 games, which is what they won last year.
Yeah, I think they win 3 games this year. I think this is going to be the struggle bus for them. So, all right. So I assume we both agree in Patriots not winning division. So who is going to win the division? Again, Bills plus 180, Dolphins plus 200, Jets plus 180.
I'm going to go Jets. I think if Rodgers stays healthy, I'll go Jets to win the division.
All right, Mike, you and I agreed on all but one division. You got the Bengals, I got the Browns to win the AFC North.
That North is tough. I mean, that North is all four of those teams could win.
It'd be hilarious if the Steelers win.
Good. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, you got a very good team.
Yeah, Mike
Last
Tomlin.
year you had terrible quarterback play.
Is Mike Tomlin to the Steelers what Eric Spoelstra is to the Miami Heat?
I think Spoelstra's, it's similar. I mean, Spoelstra's won with two kind of variations.
So is Tomlin.
True. It's been a while, though.
It's been a while, but still, you kind of look at him the same way. Like, you look at these guys.
The Heat keep getting to the finals and, like, making noise. The Steelers, not so much.
True, but they make the playoffs, which is nutty.
All right, Sports Bash this hour brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. For a great car buying experience, check out Rocco and the guys over at Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road, Egg Harbor Township, your small but friendly dealer online at KeyAcuraofAtlanticCity.com. All right, coming up, we'll wrap up today's show. Up next on the Sports Bash.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, get ready to wrap up the show. Before we rock out, tomorrow at Charlie's in Summers Point, celebrating 15 years of the show. Looking forward to it. Charlie's always very supportive of the show. 15 years, thanks to them. Has been one of the sponsors of our show over the years. $2 Bud Lights. Thanks to the people over there. And, of course, everybody out there listening. If it wasn't for you guys, 15 years probably would have ended a long time ago. So thanks to all the people. Hopefully I see a lot of you people. Happy Hour Friday. It's something we created a little while back, and it just kind of took off. It's like Happy Hour Friday, a little community that we put together. And I hope to see people out on the Friday tomorrow. A couple things real quick. Next week, I will be out for a bunch of days. Our team is heading to the World Series, the baseball team. We made it to the World Series, and I want to thank Patrick over at the Press of Atlantic City. They came out and did a great story on the team the other night. We are doing fundraisers all over the place. If anybody out there listening wants to help out, you can go to our website, 973ESPN.com. We have an article up there to tell you how you can help out, donate. We're having a fundraiser on Saturday down at Myers Lighthouse in Ocean View. It's open to the public. You can stop out, make a donation there. Going to have food trucks and all sorts of unbelievable prizes. So, yeah, that'd be great to see some people. The team's practicing a lot. We've been getting geared up for this thing. You got to raise a lot of money. You know, that's one of the – we should talk – we'll talk about that one day, about the amount of money that you need to kind of pull these things off. You hear, oh, Atlantic Shore's going to the World Series again. Yeah, we've been there a bunch, but it's a pretty big undertaking. So if you're out tonight, you'll see the boys, a bunch of guys fundraising. They're over at the Clam Bar in Summers Point, I believe, tonight, right now. I think down in Avalon at the Avalon Summer Concert Series. Josh, go over there and say hello to them at the Avalon Summer Concert Series. You got some boys out there. Saturday, we'll have a couple guys over at the Brigantine Farmers Market. We've had guys all over town. If you've donated, thank you. If you can, awesome. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com, for details on that. Or stop out Saturday, or stop out tomorrow at Charlie's. We'll talk to you then on a Happy Hour Friday.